Well, every road I see leads away from me. There's not a single one that leads me home. The road keeps saying, friend, come see what's round the bend. So is it any wonder that I roam? All the places I have been keep calling me back again. Down in the pines I hear the cold winds blow. My heart keeps telling me, footloose and fancy free, and the road goes by and calls me as it goes. Well, maybe somewhere there's a someone waiting with a smile, and maybe there'll be some place I can stop and rest a while, and maybe you weren't meant to be just a rolling stone, and there's a road to travel on that leads you back to home. You're muted, Duke. There you go.
Fixed.
Sorry, guys. That was my bad. I was a little late because I was trying to edit a video.
That's all right. We are here and rolling. And I want to thank you all for joining us here tonight, and all y'all that come in after the fact. Thanks for stopping by and watching. I guess one thing I haven't done before, and I know Garrett does this on his chat, is explain the rules of the chat, which is keep it family friendly, no politics, that stuff on the side. And Garrett's here. He moderates the chat, as well as I made Dustin a chat moderator, being he pops in. And if Plowboy ever shows up, he's a channel moderator as well. But yeah, just keep it civil. And yeah, family friendly. So, Garrett, you want to go ahead and read through the thing like you tend to do?
Yes, sir. We have Guns of the West is in. He says, first again, blah. George Gooding said, way to go, Dustin. Gunsmith 4570's in, said, howdy at all. Oregon Outback said, will Johnny and Billy be your guests tonight? That'd be kind of cool if we could figure out how to do that. Diane Houston's here, said, hello, everyone. Billy Allen's in. Said, looking forward to it. Chris Klein said, hello, all. Hardy is in, and Christopher Mead said good evening, and we're doing pretty good here. My computer was a little slow, so I don't have the numbers all up yet.
Right. All right. Well, I guess we'll get this thing rolling here. So, yeah, the topic of tonight, by popular demand, I was just kind of talking about the history of the buffalo out west, and really, this is a very broad topic, and I could really probably spend several days on it, but I'm going to try to narrow it down, and we'll stick it inside an hour and a half, maybe 2 hours here tonight. I'll do my best anyway. So anyway, kind of the start with the I guess you could say the decimation of the buffalo. It really gets started really early on in the 1700s, because buffalo did extend, as far east as Tennessee, and maybe even a little further east than that. So buffalo weren't unfamiliar to the Easterns. They just weren't very common. They're slowly going to get pushed back to the west. But that real hard-hitting decimation is really not going to get started until the late 1830s and early 1840s. And what starts that all is fur trade. It's plain and simple. It was a fur trade that led to all of it. So in 1823, you have Ashley's crew that come out. At that point, they're after beaver pelts, because beaver pelts, they're using them for the big fancy top hats. And so there's a very high demand for beaver. There's been a high demand for beaver for many years, but it really takes off in North America, and or I should say takes off again in North America in 1823, because there's this whole section of the western will become the Western United States that has not really been explored. It's not been that readily exploited for its beaver wealth. And as you get into the 1830s, through the 1820s, into the early 1830s, the demand for that beaver is going to start to drop down because hat makers are going to find other sources of other types of fur that work very similar to beaver. And the reason why beaver is in such high demand is that the fur that's close to the beaver's body, not the long guard hairs that you see that give the beaver the color, but that real fine fur that insulates it, it kind of sticks together to provide insulation. It's kind of like wool. It locks in. And so it produces excellent felt. And as the fur trade goes on and you start seeing exploration of South America, they find out that nutria rats, well, their hair does something similar. And they're going to start using nutria. And then eventually that's going to lead to nutria taken all over the South. That's why they're so thick in there, is for hat companies. So the nutria are going to start coming in. And then once we get trade connected with China, things start to come more readily from China. Suddenly they start making hats out of silk as well. And so the fashion change. What's that?
I said, don't you know nothing? Silk's made out of worms.
Yeah. So as the change in hats comes around, the price of beaver starts to drop. And the first tick in the price is going to be about 1833 to 1834. And that's when you're going to start seeing more trading posts start popping up, because trappers realize we're not going to be making the money. Let's start trading for furs, and that's where the money's really strong. So you're going to see Bent St. Vrain Company. They're going to establish a trading post in Colorado. William Sublette with Rocky Mountain Fur Company is going to establish a trading post on the Laramie and Platte Rivers, which will become known as Fort William. Later, it's going to become Fort John, and then, of course, Fort Laramie. So all these trading posts start to pop up. And then about 1837, 1838, somewhere thereabouts, the price of beaver takes another hit. And this is the big one. The price keeps dropping every year. And it gets to the point that in 1840, so few trappers show up to the rendezvous, they cancel it. The last good year for beaver is 1842, when the price of beaver hits close to what it was before. It gets up. The highest I've seen was $4 a pound, which is pretty good at that point. But the following year, it's right back, and it's going to hover around 90 cents a pound for a long time. So with the fact that the beaver have pretty much been trapped out at this point, the price of them's down. Well, there's no point in trying to make money off of them. So the trading posts that have been established to trade for furs start looking for other ways to bring in income. And right around 1838 is when you start seeing more and more buffalo robes being traded and sent back east. Now, with the buffalo robes, at this point in time, they are trading with the Native Americans. These are tanned robes, ready to go, pretty much get picked up by the traders, packaged, sent back east. The fur buyer is going to buy them there. He's going to send them to his markets in Eastern United States, Europe. They go on the shelf and they go to sell. There's no having to send them to a tanner. It's just changing hands on who the merchant is. And by the time it gets to the end user, it could be up to $20 in value or more. And so it starts to become a novelty item. And where you start seeing these used is the good quality ones are used as blankets, rugs, lap blankets for carriages. You see hats, mittens, coats made out of buffalo fur. And it's kind of a novelty thing because, by this point in time, pretty much everybody on the East Coast and in Europe, they've never seen a North American buffalo. And so to have that sitting on their floor and they invite their friends over for a party, it's kind of a sign of social status. It gives you that social provenance. Lesser quality hides are going to be sent down to the South and be used as cheap blankets for slaves because they're going to come in, the worst of the buffalo robes, going to come in for a little bit cheaper than what you would pay for a wool blanket. So a lot of them were used for slave blankets down in the South. So as that demand starts to grow, Well, that means they need more buffalo robes. And the Native Americans are the ones that are bringing these buffalo robes in. So what the traders are going to do is they're going to start offering more and more goods in exchange for buffalo robes. That demand is going to put great stress on the buffalo population. So, for instance, at Bent's Fort down here in southeastern Colorado, in 1840, if I remember right off the top of my head, it was about 15,000 buffalo robes were sent back east. And that was one of their best years. And if you figure they were making on average about $5 a head, that was $60,000 just in the buffalo robe trade. That's a multi-million-dollar business today. You know, that's what Walmart does, or close to what Walmart does, or I should say, a Walmart store does. Not the whole corporation, because they make more money than we'll ever own. But anyway, so they're sending back 15,000. You've got Fort Union up there on the Missouri River, up there on the North Dakota-Montana border. They sending out, when they get really going, they're sending out close to 100,000 robes a year. So that's the one that's probably making it like the Walmart Corporation in general. They're at Fort Laramie. They're going to see, I should say under Fort John, you're going to see similar amounts of hides being traded, although there was a lot more competitors in that area at that time. And so they don't get as big of concentrations. But all this pressure is going to cause the buffalo to move around. Because whereas before, where the Indians were hunting them for sustenance, food, and shelter, now they're hunting them for basically, essentially money at this point. And so the notion that, they used every part of every animal they killed, well, you kill 20 buffalo a year, do you need 40 shoulder blades sitting around? They took what they needed from the animal. Nature got the rest, and in their eyes, that wasn't wasted. Somebody was going to use something off of what was left behind. But then, as it starts to become a monetary thing for them, they're going to start killing buffalo for the hides. Because, at first, they figure, the buffalo will come back after a time. All these animals are going to use this carcass, it's not going to waste. But within a few short years, there are tribes that start to realize these buffalo are not coming back. And you see that once again down at Bent's Fort. The Arapaho by the 1840s, mid-1840s, are saying, this is bad. It's not going to be long before we have to settle down and start living like the whites, because there ain't going to be any buffalo for us to eat. The Cheyenne are a little bit more optimistic. However, the Cheyenne complained to William Bent that they're having to go further and further east to find buffalo because the pressure from Bent's Fort pushes the buffalo away from the Rocky Mountains. They're going to push them to the east. Now, you go north with all the trading posts along the Missouri River, it's the opposite. The buffalo are going to push west. And they're going to push into the Powder River country up there in the north, which is going to be one of the leading things that's going to cause the conflicts that's going to come and ensue, such as Red Cloud's War and the Great Sioux War of 1876. So with this shift, everything moving around, you're really starting to see that decimation of the buffalo populations. And we haven't even got into the buffalo hunters that are coming out west yet. This is still in the 1840s. Mm-hmm. Now, as you get into the 1850s, the buffalo robe trade is going to kind of plateau. And, looking at the Fort Laramie records, of course, down here in 1849, Bent St. Vrain Company dissolves. William Bent abandons his fur trading post, continues to trade in Santa Fe. He continues to use his trading post up on the Platte River, which was called Fort St. Vrain for his business partner's nephew's name, Marcellin St. Vrain. Marcellin ran the place. He's going to trade there. He's going to do some trading up in Fort Laramie. And then in 1854, thereabouts, he's going to establish Bent's new fort. But by then, the buffalo robe trade, the Indian trade down this part of the country is pretty much dead. Mm-hmm. And so he's going to wind up selling that out to the Army. Well, the Army's going to take it away from him without ever paying for it. But it becomes Fort Lyon. And hey, Garrett, is that you commenting on there?
Yeah, it's accidentally it's sending it out as your name because we're not on my channel tonight. I didn't know.
That's fine. I want to make sure nobody was hacking us.
Yeah, nope, that's me.
So as you're moving through the 1850s, the buffalo populations are still going to be getting hit with the fur trade. And once you start getting into the 1860s, you're going to see as the trains start coming through, you're really going to see that population start to decline again.
Mm-hmm.
Now, it's worth noting, there's been enough people coming across the prairies at this point that the people have introduced disease to the Indians on multiple occasions. Well, the big one was the cholera epidemic of 1849.
Mm-hmm.
But the people are bringing livestock, and the livestock are no different than the people that are traveling. Oxen are going to bring in diseases to the buffalo that the buffalo have never experienced and aren't immune to. Diseases such as brucellosis. Tick fever was another big one. Now, brucellosis, that's the one that, it's not going to kill the animal, but essentially it's going to sterilize it for the rest of its life. It won't produce an offspring. And really, that's the one that's going to be detrimental. Because if it gets into a cow that could have produced 8 calves, well, she's not going to be able to produce anymore. Tick fever goes through the herds pretty quick. And so you take that into account, and plus what comes up in the 1870s, it does not take long, and then buffalo are really going to start to disappear there. And I got to have a quick drink.
Okay, guys, if you guys have any questions, shout them out, and we'll stop every 10 or 15 minutes, and I'll read them. We don't have many questions in here. We are running 31, which is really good, considering we're only going on one channel tonight.
Right.
Actually, 32 right now. My computer was a little slow starting off. Was the intro jumpy on your end?
Yeah, it was.
Yeah, it was mine because I was trying to upload a video at the same time.
I was hoping that this wasn't because I've got low connection on my internet, and I was hoping my sister wasn't watching a big movie tonight.
No, that was me. So we had a few people in here. Hardy asked, "Is that Garrett singing?" Yes, that is Garrett singing. Gots Locos in said hello all. Louisiana Grace said, "Well, good evening, fellas." Kodak Tackman said, "Howdy, y'all. I'm late as usual." Franklin Horse said, "Good evening." Garza Vlogs is in, and he said, "Good evening. Hi." And Hardy said, has a question here. Are buffalo robes actual robes or just another name for a pelt, hide, or skin?
So an untanned buffalo skin is referred to as a hide. Are also called flint hides because they get hard as a rock. A buffalo robe, part of that, from what I've looked into where it gets its name, is the sign for buffalo robe, which is the Native Americans, you make the buffalo horns and then like you're wrapping up in a blanket. And so that's kind of where the robe, because you can wear it like a robe. But robe often refers to the Indian tanned buffalo hide. And so a robe is a finished product that is ready for sale. Hide is something that needs to be tanned at that point or turned to raw hide. It still has to be processed. It's been fleshed and that's it.
That's a rawhide, basically.
Yeah, pretty much. It's a hair-on, untreated hide. Yeah.
11 Bang Bang. That's Ethan is in, and Uncle Chaw is in, and he wants to know. I can click on these. I forget. What guns would be most common for buffalo hunting in pre-cartridge area? Trade guns, perhaps.
Certainly, trade guns would be used. 62 caliber is efficient to get a buffalo off a horseback, but really, when it comes to native hunting of buffalo, they're still going to use the same old tools they've been using for, at that point, hundreds, if not a few thousand years, which is going to be the lance and the bow and arrow. And that's just, the way they know how to do things. And so, with the bow, it's pretty self-explanatory. And when it comes to quality of bows, it was said that a good Indian bow, and this is reading from what the Indians talk about on making the bows, is that a good Indian bow would shoot an arrow through the buffalo and would come out the other side. Right, or an excellent Indian bow would shoot it and come out the other side. A good Indian bow would bury it up to the feathers on the entry. So they're used to using the bows, and really they're not the great big bows like you're used to seeing in some of the movies like what am I thinking of, Robin Hood and that. They're fairly short bows, fairly short arrows. But when you look at those original native arrows, those things are designed just right on through. Very aerodynamically designed. And hunting points are designed that if they don't go through, then you can pull them back out and use them again, because it takes time and effort to make them arrows.
Mm-hmm.
When it comes to hunting lances, there's a lot of different styles. You got some that have the real long blades on them. You basically run up behind it, poke it through the ribs, and try to get it through the heart. You get the shorter lances that you try to throw through. And then something you don't see very often, and I think it was a Spanish that introduced this, is hawking lances. So if you're familiar with leather work, we've got this tool called a round knife, and it's a big rounded blade, half circle. Well, a hawking lance, essentially take that blade, put it on the end of a long spear, and you run up behind the buffalo, and you use that to cut the hawks. You basically give him an Achilles tip.
Oh, yeah.
Cut those, and then when he can't run anymore on his back legs, then you go in and finish him with a spear, regular spears and bows and arrows. So, mostly it's going to be the bow and arrow. It's going to be used in the hunting of buffalo during that time period. And of course, as you know, more and more Anglos start to come out west, then yes, you're going to have, the 58 caliber rifles. A friend of mine shot one with a 54, dropped her right in her tracks. So the key is don't shoot them in the head. You just make them angry. You want to hit the lungs or the heart. Preferably the lungs, because you hit them in the heart, I've been told they'll run for 3 miles. You hit them in one lung and both collapse. And then they just stand there and blow blood. And that's even accounted into the Buffalo 100 days, where you start getting into the cartridge era.
Just to piggyback on that, as far as the trade guns, I have read an account where I can't remember who it was. I think you actually sent me. It might have been in the I'm not remember where I read it, but I read that one man who was a white man living with the I believe it was the Crow at the time, talked about how down on the east side of the mountains, everybody had plain style rifles, but the Indians on the west, and this was in the 1870s, later 70s, on the west side, they were still using the plain Hudson's Bay smoothbore rifle smoothbore gun. He called it the smoothbore gun, and he talked about how it was very good for hunting buffalo, because you didn't have to worry about range when you were running them with horses. At 5 or 6 feet, it would do the job. But there was also hunting with cap and ball revolvers too. So
yeah, there was. So the old mountaineers that come out when they'd hunt buffalo, they would hunt it in Indian fashion, and that's why even into the Buffalo 100 days, buffalo hunters weren't really called buffalo hunters; they were called buffalo runners, because there was more prestige in running up beside the buffalo and shooting it on a dead run than there was, sitting in a blind and picking them off. And so the old trappers, they would do that, and there's accounts of them doing that, spitting a ball down the board. I forget which guy it was. I want to say it's old Bill Williams. They went to hunting a buffalo, and he threw a handful of round balls in his mouth and just would dump his horn up, spit a ball in, hold it up until he got up next to the buffalo, and then he'd lower it and pull the trigger. They successfully done it.
Tom Tobin did that too, from what I've read.
That may have been who I was thinking of, was Tom Tobin.
Yeah.
But and the mountain men, they were, that's kind of a thing. You get an anti or reverse assimilation. The mountain men were adopting a lot of the native cultures when they come out west, so they adopted that style of hunting. Of course, they didn't really adopt the bow and arrow to a great extent, but and so so you're gonna see hawking rifles, what few are out there. Pretty much anything 54 caliber or bigger, they'll use that for buffalo. And you didn't see much you didn't see it very common getting tongue-tied already. Was not very common to see a gun out in the West that was less than 50 caliber. And that comes down to the fact that bigger game, you need a bigger ball. And to be honest with you, I think 58 is about the smallest I'd want to use on a buffalo. But I do know a guy that did do the job with a 54. It's all on shot placement at that point.
Well, the man that came in and settled my area, one of the first guys in 1872, he talked about going out and shooting a buffalo when he was underarmed with his Spencer.
Yeah.
And he felt that was, even though he had his dragoon and his Spencer, even in the 1870s, even he's still carrying cap and ball revolver. But he talked about how when he come upon the big bull, he wished that he'd had his plains rifle.
Right.
And so, yeah, especially early 1870s, the cartridge guns weren't up to, a few of them were, but a lot of what people were hunting buffalo with, especially guys that weren't working for a company, a lot of guys still using those. Okay,
Right.
so we got another question here. Hardy says, been reading about guns in the West. Says trapdoors were called needle guns because of the long firing pin. Have you seen them called that? Yes. I've been studying on that quite a bit. Now, the real needle gun is the needle fire rifle. It's over in Europe, where it would pierce a paper cartridge and explode an internal primer. But the first and one of the only places I've actually seen it referred to as needle gun, some people, there's probably others, but the first place that I've seen it referred to as a needle gun was Bill Cody in 1867, referred to the rifle that he managed to get away, I believe, from Fort Larned. Some people believe other things, but he managed to get that rifle away. He called it Lucretia Borgia, and he always referred to it as his needle gun. They called it that because it did have a long needle-like firing pin that went all the way through the block.
Considering block that long. Of course, I think there's firing pins today's guns that are longer than that.
Yeah. Franklin Horse said the natives ate all pre-Spanish contract horses. They had to hunt on foot until Europeans reintroduced equines. Hardy said, so Major Sharp was mimicking the buffalo hunters. Yeah. In the book Buffalo Harvest, the author used a Sharps 4090. Victor Schultz is in, and Gary Stottlemeyer's in. He says, checking in, brothers, and we're caught up. We're running 33 right now, so if you're ready to go again. What year are we at?
So we're getting into the 1860s at this point.
Okay.
And so by the time the 1860s come around, you're starting to see some of the buffalo here in Colorado move back in to the Bents Fort area. Never to the point like they were when the Bents first get out there. So there's some migration after that kind of settles down. But, the bigger concentrations are kind of out in the middle, away from the mountains out there in the middle. And so in the 1860s, after the Civil War, you're going to start seeing the rail lines come west. You've got the Transcontinental Railroad, which is going in and gets to Cheyenne, Wyoming in 1867. It's going to get completed in 1869. About that same time, you've got the one coming across Kansas. And that one, I forget what the heck the name of this one
Kansas
is.
Pacific.
Kansas Pacific, yeah. It's going to come across, go by Dodge City, Abilene, all them, which is why the Texas Cowboys are going to drive their cattle up north to get to the rail lines to ship them back to eastern markets. So when those rail lines start coming through, well, guess what? Buffalo and trains don't really mix. And if you're familiar with what they call a cow catcher on the front of a train, well, it turns out if you hit a buffalo with a train, it will derail it.
Yeah,
you derail that
no kidding.
It's full of steam, and it's not a good day for the driver. So that gets to the point where the government, they talk about hiring, and at some point they did hire people basically to sit on the trains and shoot buffalo. Just to get from the tracks.
Some people don't like that, but I think it'd be a fun job.
Right. And then there also comes a thing, you've got to feed all these people that are building the rail lines. And so the rail companies are going to hire men to hunt buffalo to supply all these people with meat. And so the amount of buffalo that starts getting killed, it starts to go up in a great number. And some people said these people just killed indiscriminately. But when you actually look at it, a lot of these guys were upset when they had to kill buffalo and leave a lot of it behind. Because, there's good meat there that they were having to leave behind. And also the hides. And the hides could have some value. And so a couple of the first guys that are really going to start this buffalo hunting are the Moore brothers. And I can never keep track of which one's which, but there's J. Wright and J. Wesley Moore. And I can't remember which J is which that goes with
J.
that.
East and J. West.
Yeah. They're both J.W. Moore, so to alleviate any confusion. So the Moore brothers are going to come out, and they're going to start hunting buffalo for the rail lines. You're also going to see a man by the name of Rath come out. And the Moore brothers finally get this idea. Well, maybe we can make some money on these hides. So they contact a tannery in New York City, and they take 30 hides back to New York by train, and they sell it to a tannery. And the tannery gets back with them and says, we'll pay you $3 for every hide you can bring us. That's the price it was being paid for tanned robes out west to the natives. It was $3 worth of trade goods on average. Never really got above $3 unless it was like a painted or a real special robe. So for untanned hides, $3 a piece, that's worth some money. And now you've got a train system, transportation method that can make that worth its money to actually ship that many untanned hides. Because the thing of it is, it takes more space to ship untanned hides than it did to ship buffalo robes back in the day.
Yeah.
Buffalo robes were often folded up into a nice square and stacked 10 at a time and pressed down into what they call a bale. And one of the ideas, the pressing of it is to keep bugs out, because bugs love hides. And brain tan hides, they love those too, because brains are natural and they can eat them just as easy as they can eat the skin. So bugs were a major issue. And they're going to be a major issue for the hide hunters here at this point, because you'll start seeing them soak these things with arsenic to keep the bugs out. So, yeah, buffalo hunter's life's not an easy life. So that kind of gets things started. And so when you start getting into the early 1870s, man, things are really starting to get wild. The natives at this point down in the southern region, so we're focusing kind of down in the southern part of the Buffalo Range, so Panhandle of Texas, Oklahoma area. This area is kind of, the Indian Territory. Most of Oklahoma is there. This is the Indian Reservation. You have the Cheyenne, you have the Kiowa, you have the Southern Arapaho, you have the Comanches, a few other tribes. They're all kind of concentrated down there, and they start realizing that, hey, these guys are hunting our buffalo. And at this point, this Panhandle area has kind of been set aside as their hunting reserve. And so at first, they do a pretty good job of keeping the white hunters out. Pretty much there's a line. I forget what the line was. I think it was the Cimarron River. I can't remember off the top of my head. There's a line there. You don't go south of that or you're going to get killed.
Comancheria.
Yeah, you're getting into the Comancheria. And so the federal government at this point is wanting to force the Indians to assimilate fully into Americanized white society, if you will. And so they really stopped trying to keep these buffalo hunters out. And finally, it's kind of like they did with the Black Hills with the gold rush. They quit paying attention or quit caring, one of the two, about these buffalo hunters going in. And in 1874, you're going to start seeing the buffalo hunters penetrate into there, and that's going to start the Buffalo War, or the Red River War of 1874, and that's when you're going to have incidents like the brain fart here.
Adobe Walls?
Yeah.
Sorry.
At the Battle of Adobe Walls, you're going to have a lot of those conflicts take off at that point. And so the reason why, there's a southern herd that's getting hit in northern herd, it all comes back to these rail lines. The herd is going to divide there about the time these rail lines go through. One herd crosses the Arkansas River about at Dodge City, and they said it took 2 to 3 days for that herd to get across. Go south. The other half of it kind of goes north. So you kind of got these two fields spread out. So by 1877, 1878, thereabouts, the southern herd pretty well is decimated. There's hardly a buffalo left alive. And the Comanches at that point and the Southern Cheyennes, they're all pretty well forced. They've got to start living like the whites. Quanah Park here eventually is going to start raising cattle and becomes a pretty prominent rancher down in that area. But the 1880s is when you're going to see the northern herds start to be decimated. So the resistance, you could say, the Indian resistance for the northern herd wasn't quite there when the buffalo hunters got in. That's because in 76 you have Great Sioux War. pretty much all those tribes that were in that area where all this hunting is going to take place, they've been pushed out. And at this point, Sitting Bull's still in Canada. Or, excuse me, no, he's just got back to Canada. So they're all on the reservation. And so they're going to start in on the buffalo herd up there, and it's going to last about as long as the southern herd did. And, by 1888, there's hardly any buffalo left. And some of the guys that took to buffalo hunting up in that northern one were guys that played around in the Fort Laramie area where I'm familiar with. One of them is Frank Gerard. Frank Gerard takes to buffalo hunting there for a while. Almost gets gored to death by a bull buffalo. In fact, he found a small little trench gully to hide in, and that was the only thing that saved him because that bull was not going to let him get out of there. He stood there for a long time and would not let Frank out. But that's going to continue on until it gets to the point where there's not enough buffalo left to justify going out and hunting them. Just like with the beaver, there wasn't enough beaver left to justify going out and trapping them anymore. So once again, the fur trade really never comes to an end. It kind of just changes focus. And so the other thing that's running around out here in great numbers is wolves. And so those few remaining buffalo at this point are going to start being used basically as the bait for the wolf hunting. And the wolf hunting is not going to last very long because hunters realize you go out and you can take one old buffalo bull or cow, any old buffalo, shoot that buffalo, cut off a nice roast, cut it up basically like stew meat cubes, soak that in strychnine, go back to that carcass and just start taking your knife and punching holes and poking that strychnine-laced meat inside them holes. You come back the next day and you can have up to 20 dead wolves laying around that carcass. And so, that wolf pelt the buffalo were used in that wolf pelt industry in that fashion, for a couple of years until the wolves pretty well got exterminated. But one of the reasons why the buffalo weren't completely exterminated was efforts from men like Charles Goodnight. In fact, I think they did a study and they said like 90% or something like that of the buffalo in North America all have ties to Goodnight's herd.
Yeah. Beefalo.
Yeah, the beefalo, because he was trying to crossbreed buffalo and cattle to make a hardier animal. But, his efforts as well as the government's efforts to keep what few was left in Yellowstone alive. That's why we do have buffalo today. Not anywhere the number that we had back in the 1800s, but definitely, kept them from being completely wiped out.
So you want to go back and are you done with the overall then? The overall view?
Yeah, the only thing I was going to add in there, and so kind of the things that contributed to that final decimation, the buffalo hunters get a big or a bad rap, if you will, for most of it, and certainly it played a role. But somebody did a study in there, and they figured, with the amount of replacement, amount of buffalo would survive that are born, amount that were hunted, they did this big calculation up and should have been able to shoot buffalo into about 1940. That is, if that high estimate, about 40 million is what the one estimate is total before all this started. You should have been, like I said, should have been able to shoot buffalo into the 1940s pretty easy. But what they don't take into account is disease. And once again, like I said earlier, oxen, cattle are going to bring disease to the buffalo. They're both bovines. They're all in the same bovine family. And so that's going to take a big toll. And I believe it was Buffalo Bill Cody that claimed on one point when he was out on a scout, he come across thousands, hundreds, if not thousands of buffalo dead on the prairie. None had been shot. None had been skinned. And he attributed it, as I recall, to a lightning strike. Well,
that'd be a big lightning strike.
Maybe one heck of a bolt.
Maybe 30.
I think that one would make Zeus's hair tingle.
Yeah.
So, and there was another, the author of the article I read on this, and I'm in agreement with him, states that it was probably a disease. It was probably something like tick fever had got into that herd and wiped them out. And also, when it comes to the replacements with brucellosis, you're not going to have that replacement. Sure, the animal's going to still be walking around after it contracts it, but it takes one bull. And I think the average when it comes to cattle, anyways,
1 to 25.
Service about 25 cows a year.
Yep.
So that one bull gets it, and he services 25 cows. Well, he's probably not the only one servicing those cows. Another bull's going to come along, and it just spreads like wildfire. And before long, you've got an entire herd that's just going to die out because it's the last generation. The generation that's living is the last generation that herd will ever see.
You want me to read some comments here? We got a few.
Yeah, let's go through them.
Lone Dragoon said, finally made it. Billy Allen said, didn't Bill Cody accidentally kill his horse buffalo running? I don't know. I haven't read that.
Custer did.
Custer did. Okay.
Custer did. Yeah, I know Custer did. Because Custer tried to shoot it with a pistol and shot his horse in the back of the head, if I remember. And then was out in the middle of nowhere.
I bet that was a wreck. What a wreck.
Yeah. So, he wasn't the brightest person around. But yeah, if we want to touch on that a little bit, hunting buffalo with a handgun. I looked around, trying to find a first source besides Custer's, and I finally found one, and it was in a book that I've been reading. I wasn't even reading it, looking for that. It's called The Indian War of 1864, and it's a captain of Company F of the 7th Iowa Cav who was out here in Colorado. And he mentions on 2 occasions they went out with their pistols and were shooting buffalo, and they're saying, 20-some shots to bring it out of buffalo. So I'm thinking they were probably using 1860 armies instead of 3rd Model Dragoons. But, yeah, it was done. It was absolutely done back in the day.
Sounds like a mess. Franklin Horse said, I've known a bunch of Moors. They were all trouble, LOL. Artie said, a man named Rice sounds like a spaghetti western movie. Billy Allen's in said, I'm in Texas, not far from where the Rice City used to be at Fort Griffin, Fort Phantom, and Fort, was that Chadbourne?
Chadbourne,
okay. Chadbourne. Encyclopedia of Buffalo Hunters and Skinners, Volume 1 and 2 are excellent books. I don't know if they ever released a Volume 3.
3 is supposed to be coming here, I think, next year. It got delayed for, I think the publisher decided they didn't want to do it because it wasn't selling very good, but I think there's going to be 4 of them. But yeah, I read somewhere that the 3rd one is coming.
Okay. Billy Allen also said one of the Moore brothers killed a white buffalo out by Colorado City and Schneider.
Oh, okay. Yeah, that's not too far from where I'm at.
Kerry Stottlemyre said we have about 90 head of plains bison on Camp Pendleton Marine Corps base in North San Diego County. Yeah, we got a bunch of them here too because Ted Turner owns like all the ground 50 miles south of us down into Oklahoma, and he has big buffalo herds down there.
Yeah, and you get up there in South Dakota around the Black Hills, there's big buffalo herds up there. In fact, in Dances with Wolves, that scene on the buffalo herd, that was on the 777 Bison Ranch, and I had a friend in college that worked out there. And I got to see that herd up close and personal. And I tell you what, you don't want to get out of the truck with them.
Yeah. Billy Allen said Yellow House Canyon fight near Lubbock.
Yep.
Chris Klein said, I read about Custer shooting his horse. And Billy Allen said, could have been Custer. I'm shooting from the hip here. You want to get into, go back and talk about some specifics about things like, let's say, Adobe Walls Battle 2, because we were really getting deep into cartridges the other day, and I don't know if you still have that book handy, but that would be very interesting.
I can find it right quick. I think it's out. Yeah, it's out here.
While you're looking for that, Duke, I'm going to go ahead and run this video on the 3 major firearm types.
Go for it.
All right, guys, this is the 3 major firearms types of the late 1860s, early 1870s used in buffalo hunting. And since we're not using airsofts tonight, we actually recorded all this beforehand. So enjoy this while we take a little break. It'll take about 5 minutes, and we will be right back.
We got kind of a special treat here. The 11 Bang Bang boys brought over this 43 Spanish rolling block, Remington rolling block, and I'll have one of them get up here and talk more about it. But we're going to take it here and fire a couple 4 shots out of it. So on rolling block, they're pretty simple to load. Bring them back to full cock, drop the block down, take a cartridge, load it in, close the block, and you're ready to go. So we got a target set roughly 50 yards out there. We'll see how I can hit. Well, I don't know if I hit the target or if I hit the stand, but I hit something. Did I hit the plate or the stand?
You hit the plate.
Okay. Well, it's right on at 50 yards then. So to unload, same thing, just pull that. It don't kick the casing all the way out, so you got to pull that out by hand. And not particularly this round, but this rifle, along with the Sharps, was devastating on the buffalo herds out in the west. And even with this 43, it would be a good buffalo cartridge. These sights are dead on at about 50. Might have to trade you out of this one too. I think I broke the target. It come off the chain.
Now, if you're not familiar, a Sharps rifle is what's known as a falling block action. So right up here, there is a big square block. And the reason it's called a falling block is because when you push down the lever, the block falls in the receiver, which opens up and exposes the chamber. So loading this is very, very straightforward. What you do is you drop the loading lever, and then you push a bullet in from the back, close it up, bring the gun back to full cock, and you're ready to fire.
There we go. All right, so this is the 1866 Springfield trapdoor rifle. This is what Buffalo Bill used, with one exception. This one has been cut down, which is what actually most buffalo hunters in the 1870s and 80s, if they were carrying a trapdoor, this would have been probably what they had. This is a 66, obviously in 50-70, big 50 caliber. Now, a few things that are obviously going to wind up being different than the other Buffalo rifles that we've already pointed out are we have only a little sight piece here with, it has two, you can't see it there, but it has two peep sights and a regular sight, and if you flip it all the way down, it has a small sight. So the sighting in this is very, very crude, to say the least. This is an old military rifle. We have a two-position tumbler, and you cannot get that door hardly open in the first position. Open it up, you're going to insert a 50 caliber cartridge, close it, bring it back to full cock, you're ready to fire, bring it back, how you like to put it on full cock to open it. You're going to kick the shell out, and you didn't hear it because this one in particular doesn't have the spring in it right now, but it will eject the shell completely out, allow you to load a new shell. This gun would have cost $8, where your Remington and your Sharps would have cost you anywhere from $30 to $50. So good economical hunting piece right here. And we're back.
We're back.
That's just the three major kinds, guys. That's definitely not all that was being used, but that's the three major kinds.
Right.
Can you think of any other off the top of your head?
Oh, I know Spencers were used. Trying to think. I think it was Yellowstone Kelly used a 66 Winchester.
Henry's were used to an extent. I know that because
Yeah.
Bill Cody challenged another guy challenged Cody to a hunting competition with the guy using the Henry and Cody using his 66. and Cody smoked him over the course of so many months. I think it was weeks or months, how many you could get. But
Right. But when it comes down to, the southern herd, you're pretty much going to see mostly Sharps, rolling blocks, and probably a few Spencers. And you look at some of those pictures from those southern herds, and most of the pictures, I've never seen a trapdoor once in a buffalo hunter camp photograph.
That's because they really weren't getting surplused until the mid to late or 1870s. So you're going to see them up north more than down south.
Yeah. In fact, I'm going through a book here, and this is a great source. This comes recommended from a friend of mine that used to be a professor down, I think it's Texas Tech in Lubbock. But it's Buffalo Guns and Barbed Wire. And this one's a great little book. And it's got some excellent photographs. One of my favorite ones here, this is actually a Buffalo Hunters camp. So one thing I hadn't got into is how the hides were processed. We'll do that here shortly because processed Indian way versus the Anglo way, pretty different. But yeah, if you look at this picture here, this guy has a Sharps carbine resting up against the buffalo there, and I do believe it is a conversion, and that was pretty common. The Civil War era carbines being converted to 50-70.
So that would be a Sharps 1863 new conversion, right?
63, and I think the 59s were converted too.
Yeah, okay.
Because it didn't take much to convert a Sharps to cartridge. Just bore it out,
firing pin in it,
block, and you're done. And I think you had to modify the hammer. But trying to think here, there's some really great pictures in here, especially of the camp. So here they are. I think they're drying tongues on this one. And they also have some hides there. You got a sharpening stone set up. Basically, when they set up a camp, it was a long-term setup. These guys that were hunting buffalo, were sticking around and more set up really than even the beaver trapping or the mountain men during the beaver trapping days.
So just to clear one thing up here that's in my mind, what year did you say that the southern herd gets decimated and that ends?
By 1877, 78.
Yeah. Okay, see, that's why you're not seeing those down there, because the 66s don't really get surplused into the even the earliest trapdoors don't really get surplus to the American public until at least 73 after the Franco-Prussian War. And so it's going to take them a few years to develop. And so you're not going to see them really coming on until about 60 or 76, 77. But go ahead. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
So now the northern herd, still the Sharps and them are still pretty common. But I have seen pictures of hunters up in the northern, and it doesn't specify what they were hunting. It just says hunters in the 1880s. And, at that time, it could have been deer, elk, antelope, buffalo. But there's two guys in there that do have trapdoors.
I've got the list. It's in the book in there. I should have went and got it. But, yeah, you'll start seeing in the late 1870s, you'll see trapdoors with patch boxes. You'll see trapdoors because they're all commercially cut down, and you don't see many full-length ones. But they really start popping up out there in the late 1870s.
See, another great one here that's got some stuff on the buffalo is the Frontier Years. This copy is in pretty rough shape, and this is not in print. I don't know if Buffalo Guns and Barbed Wire is in print still or not. This is a great one, and there's one photograph I was looking for specifically. This is more up on Montana area. I don't think this is the one I'm looking for.
You want me to read a few comments while you're digging?
Yeah, go ahead, because this might take me a little bit.
Carrie Stottlemyre said, I own a Shiloh Sharps in 45-110.
That one was fairly common.
Yeah, the Lone Dragoon said, I've always wanted a Sharps in 45-110 or 45-120. Billy Allen said, I had a Shiloh in 45-70, but sold it. Regret it. I have a few Hawkins now. Let's see. Oregon Outback said, what about the high wall? Correct me if I'm wrong here, but I believe that comes out in 1885.
Yeah, it's pretty late.
It'd be very late.
The Sharp War Shard
Yeah,
Just
I almost had one of those once for $500, and I let it go, and it still.
there's where I'm looking for is these. Okay,
Boar
so
shark.
I'll start with this one, but this one is on the northern herd, and once again, you'll see a sharp propped up against that dead buffalo, kind of in the center of things there.
Is that the boar shark?
No, that's a. I think it's a 74 sharps.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's got to be a 74 because it's got the big hammer on the side. The 74 and the 75 are pretty distinguishable. They're the exact same action, but one has a great big hammer and the other one's got a smaller hammer.
And the boar shark has no hammer at all. It's striker fired. Kind of a
Yeah.
cool gun.
Let's see here. There's another one. I'm trying to see. I think that's hard to tell. I'm pretty sure that's a Sharps. So these guys just have their guns hanging off the side of their horse. I don't know how well you'll see that, but that one I can tell is a Sharps. The other one you can't really tell. There's one specific one I'm looking for. It may not be in this book. Maybe in another one.
Gots Loco said, I know of 3 properties here in St. Louis. What are you talking about? They're talking about that. Billy Allen said, that's awesome news about the Volume 3. I got the first 2 about 10 years ago.
Yeah, don't quote me 100% on that, but I'm pretty sure I read that it was coming out soonish. Oh, let's see here.
Hardy's got you a question. Would a non-converted Sharps be used commonly?
By the time you get in the 1870s, people are pretty well going to cartridge conversions. I mean, there's very few. But that being said, they did find muzzleloading supplies at Adobe Wall. So I'm not going to say that it didn't happen, but I'm going to say the cartridges were pretty well common at that point. But I wouldn't be surprised to find somebody that had a paper cutter Sharps, and that's what they wanted to stick with, and that's what they stuck with. But 50-70 hits a little harder than a paper cutter Sharps does. There's one of the things I was looking for, but it's taped down. Let me see if I can find a different one. Oh, that one's got the old library return thing on it. Dadgummit. So in this one by Charles Robinson, it's the Buffalo Hunters by Charles Robinson III, and I apologize, it's got a sleeve cover that's pretty glary. But on the inside cover, it gives a nice map that kind of shows the extent of the buffalo and their lines as they were being split up through the 1870s. So in 1795, oh my goodness, they have them almost over into New York. They are in New York at one point. Pennsylvania. By 1825, they're pretty much west of the Mississippi here. And then by the 1880s, 1870 is when they got the thing splitting with the railroads, which, that's about when the railroads come through there. And then, by 1883, they're pretty well down to a little portion of eastern Montana, northern Wyoming.
Yep.
And really, you could even get more detailed than that. The buffalo, it did not take long. Once the hide hunting got started, it did not take long for them to get wiped out.
It's kind of funny to think about how they actually move, because was that a map of the whole USA?
Yeah.
Because you're gonna see
this
in the
17 down, so I can't show you.
1730s, anywhere when people show up, 1730s to 16. When people show up till about the 1730s, they're in Pennsylvania.
Yeah,
and they move out to Tennessee, and they just they kind of just, as people move in. And you'll notice it, especially when you look at like guns that were being made in the colonies in the late 1600s, early 1700s. A lot of 58s, a lot of big bore flintlock rifle. I mean, when rifles weren't even hardly a thing, a lot of the first early guns are rifles. And then as you see Tennessee, Pennsylvania, as it wears on into the late 1700s, early 1800s, rifles go down to about an average of 40 caliber because there's no big game left, hardly even any deer. Right. And it's just because those herds are moving west. And so, it's kind of an interesting thing to think about.
Oh, let's see here. I'm trying to
Then
find...
as soon as people head west, they got to get a plains rifle because their little mountain rifles don't have big enough calibers to take buffalo.
Exactly. But yeah, the decimation of the southern herd, definitely the government did play a role in that to the extent that they let it happen. Because when you're reading the treaties, and the Fort Laramie Treaty is worded the same way as the Medicine Lodge Treaty of 67, basically says, you get this territory reserved for your hunting ground, and you're free to occupy it as long as there's game to hunt.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
And as soon as they let the buffalo hunters in there to hunt all the game out, well, then they that way they don't technically break the treaty.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, they were definitely worded to be the interpretation and the spirit of it to be changed, a few years down the line.
Gots Loco said
how things work nowadays. Oh, I broke my own rule.
I didn't hear you.
I was going to say it's just like how things work today, but that'd be getting political.
Gots Loco said about 20 years ago, had the opportunity to spend some time with Vic Hickey. At the time, he handed me a rifle in a soft case. I pulled it out, was looking it over. It had 3 letters carved into the 4-stock WFC. He had documentation issues to Buffalo Bill. And he says, I wonder where that is. I don't know where that one is, but I do know that Buffalo Bill's actual Buffalo rifle is in the Cody Firearms Museum. And it's got a broken stock. Oregon Outback said, oops, you are correct, 1885, except for the one used in that 1883 TV show. Must have been a pre-production model. Yeah. Doug Dukes is here. He says, sorry I'm late, boys.
Hey, Doug, glad to have you in. I been meaning to give you a call. I might be giving you a call here in a day or two. I'm working on a holster of yours. Let's see.
Yep, George Gooding said we had him in Indiana. And one more comment here. He said, fellow Hoosier. Hardy said, fellow Hoosier. Hello, neighbor. All right, you're going to go back into talk. What was that book you were telling me about the other day where we were going through calibers used at Adobe Walls fight?
Oh, okay, yeah, that one's the book on Adobe Walls, and I was going to get to that one here pretty quick. I was trying to
go ahead. I'm sorry.
There's a picture where it shows these guys that have a couple of trap doors. And I was trying to find it and read the thing on there. Is like if they're buffalo hunters or not. I couldn't remember. But yeah, everything I've been seeing in here, everybody's carrying. I mean, everybody is carrying a Sharps.
Mm-hmm.
So, Sharps is pretty much the prominent firearm there. So anyway, I'll quit dinking around with that. Right quick, I'll go through some more books on here that I use. This book is special to me. This one's The Buffalo War. It's by James L. Haley. And it's a pretty good book. The reason why this one is special to me is that this one has written in it property of Joaquin Jackson. Right up there. And if you're not familiar with who Joaquin Jackson is, he's a fairly famous Texas Ranger. And this guy was going to write an autobiography on him. So when I got this book on Amazon that said that in there, I got a hold of this, the author on his Facebook page and asked him, I said, is this by chance the Joaquin Jackson, the Texas Ranger? And he says, yeah. He says, a number of years ago, I put in to write his autobiography, and I gave him a few books for samples, and that was one of them. And so this book, I got to buy another one, but this book pretty much lives in my gun safe because this is one thing that I don't want to ever part with. It's my type of the Texas Rangers, if you will. But anyway, that's a really good resource too. And then Life of Billy Dixon. Billy Dixon was at Adobe Walls. This is his autobiography, whatever. Yeah. Written by Olive K. Dixon.
So this should be about 3 pages long. I was born, I made one really good shot, and I died.
Yeah. Actually, it gets really, I need to sit down and read more into it, but it gets pretty good. It gets in depth there. And then it's time for the 841 train. They haven't run a single train all day, so now they'll probably run about 15 of them in a row.
Bringing the buffalo hunters.
Yeah, bringing them buffalo hunters. So, this one's Buffalo Days by Jay Wrightmore. And so, yeah, it's more of a little pamphlet book, but it's one of the guys that started it all. And this one I'm actually going to be sending a copy because I got 2 copies. I'm going to be sending one here to Garrett here pretty soon. But The Great Buffalo Hunt by Wayne Guard. This one's a little bit older. It's actually out of print. I don't remember what I paid for these out of print, but I know they were a little more spendy than other books. But it's got some good info, but being it's older, it's more dated. Some of that info isn't as good. I think this one was published. Oh, for crying out loud. 1959, so that's not terribly bad. One book on Fort Laramie is like 35 that we always refer to. And then this is the one that Garrett's been waiting for me to pull out. It was at the bottom of the pile. This one's Adobe Walls, The History and Archaeology of the 1874 Trading Post, written by T. Lindsay Baker and Billy R. Harrison. And I apologize. You cannot hardly read it with that because it does not blend well with the cover, but there's the main title. It's just Adobe Walls.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, by Baker and Harrison. And this is the one that really gets into the battle. So
should we go over the battle of Adobe Walls?
Yeah, I'll do that. And then I'll kind of get into how the buffalo were processed. The difference between natives and
sorry, this is the part I've been waiting for all of you. You want me before you get into this, let me top off our
all right,
our chat here. Serpent Hanzo's and said, howdy, just woke up. He said, Chief Hooplehead, smiley face. Hardy said, in a lot of Westerns, you see trapdoors restocked to look like Kentucky rifles. Any idea if that ever happened historically? I would imagine somebody had to restock a trapdoor at some point. As far as restocking, yeah, that happened quite a bit, but only at Springfield Armory. But what you're talking about is in a lot of Disney movies and a few others, there was one company in Hollywood that in the 1950s when basically trapdoors were as popular or as numerous as, say, 20 years ago, Moe's and the Gaunts were, and people were cutting them down and doing everything else, It was very cheap. Instead of trying to find a bunch of 200-year-old flintlocks for movies, it was very cheap and economical to take a 60-year-old trapdoor at the time in the 40s and 50s. And there was actually a company, and I can't remember their name, they were in Hollywood, that would take them and convert the lock plates over to flintlock. Ethan and I were just talking about this today. The only way you can really tell it's still a trapdoor, I'm not going to hold that up, is it's still got the receiver on it, which none of those early flintlocks had receivers. But yes, hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of those done for Hollywood. And so it's really easy to find one today, even prop guns.
Usually, they just take a flintlock and braze it right onto the...
Yep. And usually the jaws, if you look real close in those movies, the jaws on the cock won't open. The frizzen's usually locked in a weird position.
And some of them are just a brass casting of a lock.
Yeah. Franklin Horse said, Duke, you can only write an autobiography about yourself.
I meant to say biography. Yeah.
Yeah, okay. Hardy said, how close to the tracks are you? That came in loud and clear.
About 200 yards.
Okay, and he also said, are any of those books old enough to be in the public domain? Maybe somebody can record some audiobooks.
No, I think all these books are, it was The Great Buffalo Hunt was 59, and I think all of them are newer than that.
Mickey Mouse is still not in the public domain. Every time Mickey Mouse gets close to being in the public domain, the copyright protection extends another 10 years. So... basically, if nothing else changes, the first Frankenstein movie made in 1931 will be in the public domain in 5 years. But as soon as Mickey Mouse gets there right ahead of Frankenstein, we're going to get another 10 years because Disney's never going to let that go. But anyway, go ahead. Sorry.
All right. So, Battle of Adobe Walls. So, yeah, as I said, 1874, that's basically when... the only buffalo that are left are down in this, essentially it's a reserve for the natives, their hunting grounds. And so you're going to start seeing those buffalo hunters really start to push down there in number. And the government at this point says, to heck with it. We're going to go down there we're going to let them go down there and wipe them buffalo out. And it's going to spark the Buffalo War or the Red River War of 1874. And so, the Southern Cheyenne, the Comanche, the Kiowa, and it's worth noting that the Cheyenne and the Comanche had been enemies, in the 1830s and early 1840s, and then they kind of made somewhat of a peace in the 1840s. But when you start getting into the late 1860s and early 1870s, when this starts going on, they're going to form an alliance. Basically, says, we got to quit fighting ourselves amongst ourselves and start fighting these whites that are coming in. So as that gets going, they realize, the buffalo are being exterminated. They do the best they can to try to push the whites out. And like I said, before 1874, there were a few buffalo hunters that were brave enough to venture down in to this territory, but a lot of them didn't come out alive. And so the hunters start moving in, and then the war's going to erupt out. And one of the major battles in that, the one that's going to be the more famous one, is the Battle of Adobe Walls. And so this is what's known as the Second Battle of Adobe Walls. And Adobe Walls has ties to the buffalo besides this battle. It, at one point, was one of the Bent St. Vrain and Company's trading posts when they were trading for buffalo robes with the Comanches. And that trade didn't last too long. That was only an operation for a handful of years, but the Comanches just got to where they couldn't be really be trusted, in the words of the Bent St. Vrain Company. So William Bent blew up his trading post and the old Adobe Walls, because Bent hired New Mexican laborers to come out and build all of his trading posts out of Adobe, because you can build Adobe right there in one spot and you don't have to haul a lot of stuff in. It's sand, clay, water, grass. That's your bricks. Find some place where you got a few trees to put roofs on, and it's quick, easy, and it's done. So he blew up the buildings, abandoned the area. Kit Carson is going to wind up holing up there during the 1860s, trying to get away from the Comanches. That's the first Battle of Adobe Walls. So the second Battle of Adobe Walls is Adobe Walls Trading Post. And it's really not at Adobe Walls. It's a few miles up the creek, or up the river, I should say, on the Canadian. And so it was so close to Bent's old trading post, they called it Adobe Walls. And yes, at this point, there were still Adobe Walls standing from Bent's trading post that he had abandoned in 1845. So this is almost 30 years later. But they're going to establish a little trading post there. There's going to be several buildings. And this is where kind of all the buffalo hunters are going to come in to buy their supplies. Some are going to sell their hides there because it takes, a while to get from the panhandle of Texas to Dodge City or wherever else on the rail line you're going to go. And I think Raft was operating out of Dodge City at this point. So it makes sense to have these trading posts established. And I forget who it was that had the trading post there. I was going to see if I can find the map. But anyway, yeah, they had a store there. They had a little saloon. And, as kind of a safety, these guys would, when they were in town, would all stay together to, basically, have a system of defense. And so, for whatever reason, and here's the picture of what the saloon would have looked like. Basically, it's a sod house. Because sod, Adobe buildings are easy to build. Sod houses are even easier. You just cut a block out of the ground and stack it up. So anyways, kind of digressing there. But anyways, the night before the Battle of Adobe Walls, there's a telling in here of the men were all inside. I think it was the saloon or the store. I can't remember which one it was. But one of the buildings, the center beam cracked. And, sounded like a pistol going off, they say. And everybody got scared because they've got a sod roof. Sod roof with 2 to 3 feet of dirt on top, because that's how much dirt it takes to waterproof a sod roof. All that dirt, if that main beam cracks that's holding up all that dirt and you're asleep in there and it caves in, Well, you're pretty
suffocated.
much sleeping in your grave at that point. So everybody got pretty nervous about it, and so everybody was up and kind of wary. And the Indian attack is going to come in at dawn, and so the Indians don't have surprise. And there's this poor man, medicine man, that's kind of organized this thing, Comanche. And Bings, there's probably some young folks in here watching. I'm not going to say what his name translates out to, but his name is Isatai, or Isate, or however you want to pronounce it. But it translates out to a part of anatomy of a female wolf that, yeah, we won't say. But anyway, so he's kind of leading everything, and it's already off to a bad start. And so the men are awake. The battle starts in, and like I said, this is gonna be a kind of a quick go over because I haven't had a chance to refresh myself in detail. But it's gonna go over pretty fast, or it's gonna get started pretty quick. It's gonna go on through the day. The men are all inside these buildings, and they can pretty much. Well, when you're inside of a store where they've got lots of ammunition, you can pretty well hold out there for a long time. And finally, the leaders, if you will, supposedly the leaders of these groups, finally decide to stand up on a hill because these buffalo hunters with their sharps, a few guys with Henrys, the repeaters, they put up a pretty good defense. And so the Indians get out where they think they are out of range. And so they're up on the ridge, they're watching, and Billy Dixon gets this wild hair and says, well, I'm tired of them sitting there looking at us. I'm going to see if I can scare them off. And he's shooting a 45-90. And he knows a 45-90 is not going to reach out as far as this Indian is. And this Indian, they figure, is about a mile. And so he asks the guy supposedly for a 50-90 sharps. And so he takes that 50-90, he shoots. And if you've never been to the Adobe Wall site, which I think it's on private, it's hard to get access to, but I've seen pictures. A friend of mine has been there. There's a big cut bank along the Canadian there, and they're standing up there on that cut bank. First shot, they see it hitting the dirt on that cut bank, so knows it's too low. Raises up a little bit, fires again. They don't see anything. Well, he knows he's too high. So he changes back down. On the third shot, he fires. And they just see one of the Indians fall out of the saddle. And Billy Dixon even says that was the luckiest shot he'd ever made. It wasn't the first shot. It was the third. He walked it in. But when that Indian gets killed, the fight is done. At this point, that medicine man, Isatai, loses all respect, and that's when they change his name to another thing that's wolf, and then something that comes out of a wolf. But he loses a lot of respect, and, the Comanches and the Cheyennes and them, the Kiowas, start to kind of rethink things. And then from there on, my knowledge is a little bit fuzzy on what goes on after that. So, but that war is going to continue on for a little while. But by the late 1870s, it's pretty well all done.
You don't have that page on those cartridges located?
I do.
Oh, boy, here we go. This is the kind of nerdy stuff I love. Archaeology is great.
So you're going to have to get yourself a copy of this book, Garrett.
I am. I really like it. I could sit here and listen to you read it.
Let's see. Excuse me. So yeah, Myers and Leonard had a store there. That's right. Yeah. And then there was their mess hall and stable. So yeah, it was a handful of buildings. Rath and Company store. That was the company store. It was Rath and Company store.
Okay.
I don't know why I was having a brain fart on Rath. And then they had a privy. I think Rath on most of the stuff that was going on there. Let's see. Oh, there was a musket ball and some musket gun parts. Trying to find where that is.
Serpent Hanzo said host a reading next time. I'm sure a lot of people would tune in for that.
Yeah. Except I don't think. There we go. That's what I'm looking for. All right. Here we go. Table 8. Firearms ammunition.
Oh, boy.
All right. So they did have musket balls. They found a total of 10 38 caliber musket balls, 1 40 caliber, let's see, 11 45s, 2 56s, and 2 unidentifieds. And that's round balls. So I'm willing to bet that 38, that's probably a buckshot load.
Possibly, or somebody was using it to load in a 40, which was pretty popular
Right.
as a loader.
Let's see here. For bullets, 38 cal, they found 5 38 caliber bullets. So I'm guessing that's conicals.
So would you assume that's for a conversion, like handgun, a Colt conversion?
I'm willing to
handgun?
bet it's for a 38 cartridge. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Or it could be for a Colt. See, they don't really specify
yeah,
what they exactly are.
Well,
There's a 40
I'm
caliber for 1, a 44 caliber. There was, let's see, 16, 2, quite a few of those. Quite a few 45 calibers and 50 calibers. Holy Moses. So these are probably bullets for reloading brass cartridges. Because the Buffalo Hunters, they would buy, of course, you're going to buy loaded brass because there's no sense in hauling unloaded brass out to the range, but you're going to buy loaded brass. And then you'll buy bullet molds, bar lead, and powder kegs, primers, basically your reloading set. So you don't have to come in and buy bullets. You just make new bullets while you're out there on the prairies.
Hardy wants to know what a reloading setup would look like.
Let me get back to that. So 56 caliber, and I'm going to guess that's for a Spencer. They found 1, and then they've got quite a few of unidentified. And then for shot, there's all kinds of shot. They got number 2, number 4, number 5, number buck, double buck, 3 buck, and BB, which BB should be up there before number 2, but I ain't going to fault him for messing that one up. And then here's the identifiable cartridges. So for 44 Henry rimfire, they found 2. And this is unfired cartridges. These are ones that got dropped. 44 Smith & Wesson American centerfire, they found 1. 44-77 centerfire, they found 3. Let's see, 44-90, they found 1. 45 Colt, they found 1. 45
That's early.
US government, they found 2. So 45 US government, I don't know if that's 45 Colt.
That's 45-70.
Or 45-70. Yeah, well, technically.
Well, that'd be 45-70 government.
Yeah. It says U.S. government centerfire. It does not put the 70 on there, and usually they put the 70.
Well, I mean, this happens in 74.
Right.
Boy, that would be so early for a 45-70 cartridge from
That's
the government.
That's why I'm wondering if it's 45 Schofield or something. No, 45 Schofield wouldn't even been invented yet. So yeah,
I mean, all of them would have been but you just said they had some 45 Colt, so
right. There's nothing to say too that some cowboy didn't come home and shoot a 45-70 there for old fun's sake either.
And like you were just pointing out, they already named 45 Colt, so I would imagine 45 government would be 45-70.
Unless it's a 45 Colt that's marked US on the back.
Oh, unless it might be.
Then they've got 50 Remington pistol, and the 50 Remington pistol, that's for that rolling block pistol.
Mm-hmm.
Let's see, 50-70 U.S. government centerfire. There is 8 50-90 centerfire, which is a Sharps round. There's 2 50-70 or 90, and I didn't know you could mix the 2. They got 1. 56 Spencer rimfire, they found one. And then they've got a cache of 50-70 U.S. government centerfires where they found 30 in the store. And then a couple unidentifieds. Then for empty cases, you got 32 long rimfire, 44 Colt centerfire, and there's 7 of those. 44 Evans short centerfire, 1. So somebody had an Evans. And I wish somebody, it's kind of I wish somebody would make a reproduction of an Evans. I'd love to have one. Let's see, 44 Henry rimfire. That was one of the more common ones. There was, let's see, 15, 21, 24, 25, 26. 26 Henry rimfire cases found. Let's see, 44 long centerfire, they found 1. 44 Smith & Wesson American centerfire, they found 6. 4477 centerfire, they found quite a few of those, and that was one of the more popular Buffalo cartridges, the Sharps 4477 bottleneck,
which is identical to the 43 Spanish you were
shooting.
With like the 4477 has about a 15 grain heavier bullet, unless I'm mistaken. That's literally the only difference. Same case.
Right. Well, and the fact that it being a bottleneck, that thing gets a pretty good screaming velocity.
As you saw in that video a little bit ago.
Yeah. So that 4477, that is it's pretty, like I said, pretty popular round because it would really knock them buffalo down better, really, than even the 50 cal, according to some buffalo hunters. Let's see. I left off the 4477, and then they got the 4477 or 90, which they got that listed as 6. 4490 centerfire, they've got 5. 45 Colt centerfire, they've got 9, and oh, by Lord, they do have 4570 U.S. government listed as 6. And I do know Sharps did release a few rifles in 4570, so I'm wondering if those were Sharps that they were using, because it's too early to be using trapdoors.
Yeah, there's no way. There's no 73 single eye or 73 trapdoors on the civilian market in 74.
Unless somebody
because I'm going to tell you, the 73 trapdoor, they didn't even make the first one until May of 74.
Yeah.
So those things are so early. You know, that's pretty amazing. Makes you wonder if they got mixed up with the 50-70s somehow. Those were fired cases, did you say?
Yeah, these are the fired cases. Yeah.
Wow, somebody shot them then.
And most of them at the M&L store, which is where most of the guys were at. 50 Remington pistol, they found 5. And then 50-70 U.S. government, they have a lot. And some of them are rimfire and some of them are centerfire. Let's see. So they found 30 centerfire 50-70s at the M&L store, 27 at the Rath and Company store, and then a handful in other places. But amongst them, they also found a few that were rimfired 50-70s.
Interesting.
Yeah, because it says in here, parentheses indicate the number of rimfire cases within the total, the remaining having burden centerfire primers. So it makes you wonder if there were a few of those early trapdoor conversions there.
Very possible. I mean, they would have been on the market for about a year at that point already, so it's possible.
Yeah. So 50-70 or 50-90 centerfire, there's a handful there. 50-90 centerfire, 12 at the M&L store. And then when you get into the Spencers, they find 56-50 Spencer, 56-52 Spencer, and 56-56 Spencer. And then a handful of unidentified cartridges. And the Spencers are about equal in number. They did find 150 caliber cartridge wad paper. And then for primers, and these are primers that you'd buy to reload your cases. For Burdan, they found a whole bunch of those. So that was, they found the bigger concentrations in the stores and such. They did find percussion caps there. So let's see. There is a footnote. I was trying to figure out where it's at. Let's see. 44 Evans short centerfire. They have listed as not introduced until 1875, but they found one at Adobe Walls.
Mm-hmm.
And let's see. And then another one of these I read off, the 44 long centerfire. That's for the Marlin Ballard. It was not introduced until 1875-76. And they found one. So some of those may have come in after the fact.
I was about to say, when did this archaeology take place? Could have been somebody shot a round or two after that around there.
Oh, this took place in the let's see. I want to say it took place 79 was one of the excavations. 1979.
Yeah, so it's very possible even those 4570s could have been there.
Yeah, they could have come in after the fact. Well,
I mean, also 45 Colt. What in the world would anybody be doing with 45 Colt at that point? I mean, it's possible.
Considering there's 9 of them at the Rath store, that kind of tells you that somebody there had a 73 single action.
Yeah, that's possible.
And the 4570 government, there's 4 cartridges from the M&L store, and they found 2 in the stable unfired. That makes you think, yeah, probably somebody there had something or snuck out one gun. And I wouldn't be surprised if somebody didn't steal something somewhere along the line. But
that's very possible.
Yeah. But I don't remember who all had what there because I don't even remember all the names of people. I know Billy Dixon was there. Bat Masterson was there. Let's see here. For the bullets. Yeah, that 138, that's definitely for a Colt cartridge. Holy crap, there's a bunch of 58 caliber mini balls in there too. Yeah, you can tell they're 58 caliber mini balls because I don't know how well it'll show up in the camera there. Whoops. Good. Where I'm
hollow based.
Well, just by the grease rings. And one of them still wrapped in paper.
Very cool.
But anyway, yeah, this is a great resource, this book. Okay, let's see here. It's got some more firearms stuff and tables and such. Oh, yeah, this is the cache of 50 caliber. So somebody dumped a box of 50 caliber so they could probably get at them easier to reload them, and then they just got left there.
I wish they'd have dumped them off at my house. I could use a few.
Yeah. No kidding.
50 70s.
So yeah, so for expendable supplies on they found quite a bit of lead. So they were obviously making bullets there. And then this is all food stuff.
How about that loading setup Hardy was asking about? What would a reloading setup look like?
They had an example in here. But for the loading things, tell you what, the best way to visualize it is watch the movie Valdez is Coming. There is a great scene in there where he's reloading for his sharps, and he's using the old tools that the old timers would use. So
basically 2 pieces of pipe and a punch and a hammer.
Yeah, that's one way of doing it. Winchester had a loading tool that's very similar to the Lyman Ideal or the Lyman 310 tool that exists today. It's a hand loader, but it was a multi-step. You know what? I got a picture, and I don't think I can get it. Might be able to email it to Garrett and get it up here. I got a picture from when I was at the Museum of the Fur Trade. This may take me a while to figure it out, find it, but essentially, You'd have a bunch of tools. You'd have a pair of pliers that would crimp the bullets down. Like Garrett said, you'd have a hammer drill to punch the primers out. You'd have a primer setting tool. There was quite a handful of tools.
But honestly, they didn't. You don't see a lot of crimping on the single shot rifles. It's not really necessary.
Depends on what bullet they're shooting. If they're shooting paper patch, you're not going to crimp them because that crimp's going to cut the paper.
Mm-hmm.
If you're using a grease groove, you got to crimp it a little bit. But a lot of those guys did use paper patch bullets. And in my experimentation and messing around with paper patch bullets, I found out that if you turn those suckers upside down, put them in a belt, that paper patch bullet falls out. But one time I went up to a prairie dog town when I was working up on the ranch, and I took my sharps up there, and I had a belt of ammunition. Tell you what, that's about as close to feeling like a buffalo hunter as I get, because I sit up there with a pair of cross sticks and then just laid that belt out in front of me. Just started
shot little bitty buffaloes.
Yeah, just shooting. I tell you what, I figured that 45-70 tearing prairie dogs with a hard cast bullet in that just punched the hole in and out. They just kind of fall over. They don't jump around like they do with some of the other ones. But it gets the job done. There we go. All right, and I found it right off the bat. Now, if I can send this to Garrett.
If I can figure out how to get it off the email onto the computer. I'm going to read some of these right quick. We got a few to go.
Go for it.
Okay.
You want me to send it to your Garrett or your send it to the 11 Bang Bang one?
Send it to the 11 Bang Bang email. I'll see if I can drag it up here. But Billy Allen said, I've always wanted to go on a buffalo hunt. Well, you still can today, but you got to pay a lot of money. Oregon Outback said, wasn't a couple of hunters sleeping in their wagon outside that didn't survive the attack?
Yeah, and I can't, like I said, I need to go back and read all the details because I read up, everything. Well, I've read everything up to the archaeology point on this book, and I've read it twice, but that was 4 years ago that I read this thing, and I've been reading everything up north, so some stuff kind of gets out of your head. But, yeah, there was a couple of guys who was killed outside. There was... I think it was just 2 that died, and there's a few others that were wounded. Like I said, it's been a while.
Yeah. Hardy asked, also, if reloading was so common among hunters, why aren't more antique reloading molds and tools around? All the stuff I see on eBay usually post 1900.
Yeah, I don't know.
There is.
I was looking for
if you look in the right place, there is a lot of them around. I mean, especially the molds for 4570s. The old steel handle molds from, well, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe those were 1900 too. But
because I was trying to put together a buffalo hunter impression. That's why I got a lot of these books. Is my buddy that lives down in Lubbock, him and I were going to do a buffalo hunting gig, and of course that never worked out. But he had a bunch of tools, and I was trying to find. Can't find them anywhere.
Billy Allen said Bat Masterson was at Adobe Walls as well.
Yeah, I knew Bat was there.
1,538 yards was the shot.
yeah, because they measured just a little over 15. So it wasn't quite a mile.
Indians called a sharp the gun you shoot today and it kills tomorrow. Hardy said... Kerry Sotomayor said Hardy hat. Hardy's not Hardy hat. Remember that we had 2 world wars after all this, and we needed raw materials. Anything brass or copper or iron was recycled. That is possible.
There's that too.
Never even thought of that.
But I do have a shotgun reloading set that's from the late 1800s, early 1900s.
Dots Loco said Winchester 1882 tools are available on eBay readily. But the thing is, there were a lot of commercially available, especially 5070. The government had been cranking that stuff out for almost a decade at that point, and they obviously went to 4570. So a lot of that ammo got surplus. So there was a lot of commercially available 5070. 5070 was flooding the market in the mid 1870s.
Yeah, well, the military was surplus, and it's kind of like you said with Mosin Nagant.
Yeah. The older tools are harder to find.
Well, I sent those to you. They should be.
Let me see if I can do this.
I think you should be able to.
Okay, Gmail. Go ahead and you can do whatever while I'm.
All right. So I mentioned I was going to talk about the processing of the buffalo. So in the early fur trade, when it was the buffalo robes that were being traded, as I said, the Native Americans would process those, and each tribe had their little different quirks and ways of doing it, but it's pretty much the same process. So first thing, of course, men would come out, they'd go out and kill a buffalo, and the women would come along. They would take part in the skinning and the processing. The hide would be taken off, and some tribes, if not most of them at this point in time, before they started doing the trade, would split them down the back because it's easier to roll an animal up on its belly, split it down the back, and lay that hide out. And so you would see quite a few of those done that way. And so the hide would be taken off in two parts, and then they would run a bead or quill work down the middle to cover up the seam when you sewed it back together. And you start getting into the fur trade era, that kind of goes away. They start skinning them down the middle of the belly. But so when they get that hide and take it back to camp, the first thing they're going to do is flesh it on I should say some would flesh it on a beam. Others, they're just going to stretch it out immediately. But either way, they're going to go to working on it with a hide scraping tool, and I don't have mine handy right off the bat, but you take an elk antler, and where that first tine is, you cut off on so you start at the brow tine. You're going to keep that. You go down to the next tine and cut it off just above that tine. So you got a nice handle, and you cut off the brow tine, notch it so you can put in a rock or a metal bit, and then that's your bit, and that's what you use to scrape with it. So it's kind of like using a garden hoe, if you will. But they're going to thin that hide down once they get all the flesh off of it. Because when it comes off of buffalo, there's parts of it that's up to that thick. And that is extremely hard to tan. So the thinner it is, the easier it is to tan. So they'll scrape it. They'll thin it down. Once they get it thin, then they take the animal's brains. And buffalo is one of the few animals in North America that does not have enough brains in its head to tan its own hide. Because a buffalo, they got a huge skull. Their brain is only about that big.
Yeah, that's all hide and bone.
All hide and bone. Yep. So they'll mix in, soap, weed, liver bile is documented. Bone marrow. They'll use bone marrow. The fat, the grease, and the fat will help lubricate the fibers. So they'll work that into the hide, and you're looking at. And this is, like I said, depends on tribe, but you can take up to 3 weeks to process one buffalo robe. And so it takes a while. And the ones that you're keeping with the hair on are going to be done in the wintertime. So you got to keep the thing thawed out enough to scrape. Well, sometimes maybe freeze it a little bit and it scrapes a little easier. But anyway, when you're tanning it, you got to keep it thawed. And then the last step would be to smoke it. And once again, that's another thing that's dependent on the tribe, because when you smoke it, you're taking the risk of burning it. And when that thing is your money, some felt it was too much of a risk. And so you see them that weren't smoked. But the problem with not smoking it is that's another great way to get bugs too. So anyway, so after they would do that process, they get it softened, and if they're going to smoke it. That's what we consider a buffalo robe, and that's what the traders wanted to buy. And the traders wanted young bulls or cow robes. Bull robes, old bull robes, they would not take them hardly for anything. So that's going to be another thing. It's going to be a contributing factor to decimation of population as you're taking out your cows that are producing the calves. But those would be sent back east. Like I said, they're ready to tan, so they can be cut up, made into clothing. And that's why they were viable. You could offer up to, the traders would offer up to $3 in trade goods, sell them in turn on average for $5 a piece to the fur buyers. And then by the time, like I said, they get to the end user, you're looking at about $20.
Yeah.
Anybody that was traveling on the Oregon Trail that come through Fort Laramie, if they wanted to buy a buffalo robe, they would pay $20 there for it.
Woo.
Yeah. And they're going to turn around, and the settler there will sell that in St. Louis for $5, but he'll sell it to a immigrant for $20. So when it comes to when the buffalo hunters come out, now they got the train, so it's viable to send untanned hides back east. And that was the thing. Transporting it during the fur trade era is why it wasn't viable to ship untanned hides. Because, like I said, it takes a lot of space to ship a buffalo hide that you can't fold up into a nice bundle. And so once the buffalo hunters come out, the rail lines come out, buffalo hunters are going to go out usually in groups. You'd have one guy kind of financing the whole big group, 4 or 5 guys. You'd have a designated cook, 1 or 2 shooters, 1 or 2 skinners, and in some operations, the guys did everything. They'd take out a couple wagons with them, and if not more, and they would go out. They'd find a spot where there was a herd of buffalo. They would get proper with the wind, have the wind coming at your face, and they'd set up anywhere from 200 to 400 yards is on average. So the whole shooting buffalo at a mile with the 50 shirt, no, that did not really happen. Most of these guys are getting to where they're far enough away that the buffalo aren't going to smell them, far enough away that the buffalo aren't going to smell the gun smoke, far enough away that the boom of the rifle is not going to really stir the buffalo up, but close enough you can actually hit what you're aiming at. Because we're not talking precision rifles that will shoot a half-inch group at 600 yards. We're talking about big bore guns that foul out easy and probably would miss a buffalo at 600 yards if you weren't real careful.
You're at least on the trap doors in 50/70, military recommends no more than 20 shots without cleaning.
Yeah.
So probably actually less than that.
So when they'd find when a hunter would find a group of buffalo, he'd ride up 400 yards, and then if he had cover, he might get off his horse, take a couple belts of ammunition, take his sharps or his rolling block, and crawl up a little closer and get set up with shooting sticks, have his ammunition laid out to where he could get to it, and then just start loading and start shooting. And you had to shoot the lead animal first. And if you watch the herd, eventually you're going to get to where you can figure out what animal's the lead animal. But the animal that everybody's kind of following around, you want to shoot that one first, because that's going to take them a few minutes to figure out who the next one's going to be. So they shoot that lead animal. You always wanted to go for a double lung shot, because the old buffalo hunter said you hit him in the head, you just made him mad. Hit him in the heart, they'd take off and run for 3 miles and take every buffalo that was there with them. But if you shot them in the lungs, they'd stand there and snort and blow blood and turn around and fall down. And then you could get loaded up and watch and see which one was going to be the next leader. And, of course, they're going to smell the blood of the dying buffalo, and that's going to stir them up. But as they can't smell you, they are a little slow to figure out who and what you are or where you're at. And so there's guys, there's one guy, I think it was Uncle Dick Wooten, with a muzzle loader before the buffalo hunter days, said he sit down and shot 30 buffalo in a single stand in one day. This was with a muzzle loader. So you can imagine with a cartridge gun, you could shoot a lot of buffalo in one sitting. The thing of it is, you don't want to shoot more buffalo than you can skin before it gets dark.
Because wolves and coyotes get you.
Wolves and coyotes, they will have them hides completely destroyed by the time you come back the next morning.
I'll always revert back to my story on Reuben Lake. His son actually built the house Mom and Dad live in now, but when he came in the 1870s, he was out south of Mom and Dad's house out on a hill. He shot a buffalo. Got cold, got dark, so he thought, well, he ain't even going to flesh this. The hide's fine right now. It's pretty pliable right off the buffalo and warm.
Right.
And so he just rolled up in that thing, went to sleep with blood and fat and everything on it. And he froze stiff. And in the middle of the night, he woke up and the wolves were chewing on him.
Yep.
And he couldn't move to get out of that big, thick, frozen hide. And I guess he said he just hollered and hollered. And you would think that would make the wolves chew harder, but evidently he run them off. And he got out of that hide still down there in the museum with all the bite marks in it. So, yeah. You don't want to be out there after dark.
Yeah. So, yeah, as I was saying, they didn't want to shoot on average. Most of the things you read, they're shooting no more than 30. And then once they get done shooting, that's when the hard work begins. Shooting's the easy part. The real work comes in with the skinning. And some guys would go in and they'd all do knife work, and that's one of the other things you see that the buffalo hunters would buy in great numbers is they would buy boxes of knives, not just I'm going to buy this knife and go hunt buffalo. No, they bought them by the box, because they were sharpening those knives so constant. By the time they get done, you might start with a blade that's that wide, but by the time you're done with one season, that thing is down to a toothpick. And you can find knives from the buffalo hunting days still. They're out there on eBay, and there ain't nothing left. They've been worn down to nothing. So yeah. Boxes of knives, you go out and you start skinning them, and at this point, you're starting to see the skinning knives, the ones that's got the real steep curve to them, starting to become pretty prominent. They started popping up in the 1860s, but very prominent at this point. Most buffalo hunters had several knives for the job. You had a ripping knife, which was basically kind of a spear point knife, real sharp point. That was for going down and splitting the hide open. Then you would go to the skinning knife, that curved knife. And the reason you wanted a curved knife when you're skinning is because when you move your wrist, you're cutting the whole flick of your wrist. You make it one big round cut. Whereas with a straight edge, like a ripping knife, if you try to use that when you're skinning, you're just cutting with a tip the whole time. So with a skinning knife, you get better cuts. Anyway, now some guys would pull them. You get it ripped open, and then you tie on a chain to a mule, and then pull the hide off, jerk the hides off. Those were not considered to be the best quality hides because you're going to be tearing hair, you're going to mess hides up. The higher dollar is going to come from skinning with a knife. And so once they're skinned, you'd load them on a wagon, take it back to camp. Then you're going to take those hides, you're going to stake them out just like the natives would. You're going to get them fleshed off, and then you're going to let them dry. Dry for a few days, flesh side up. Then you turn them over with the hair side up. Let them dry a few more days. Then before the bugs get to them, you're going to mix up arsenic water and take, a gourd with a bunch of holes or some kind of thing to sprinkle water. And you're going to sprinkle that all over those hides. And then once they're completely dry, then you're going to load them up pile them up in a stack. And then when you're ready to take them in to sell, you load them stacks up on the wagon and haul them in. Eventually, they're going to wind up in Dodge City, and I'm pretty sure everybody here has seen the picture, but the huge stack of hides, it's like 20 foot tall and, 10, 15 foot wide. That's what they'll be stacked up, and then they're loaded onto trains and then hauled back east to the tanneries.
Okay, so you want me to go? We've almost gone 2 hours. You want to go longer, or you want to kind of cut it off here at 2 hours?
Well, we could go a little longer depending on what the folks here want to see.
Yeah,
I got kind of the difference in the processing between the two cultures. But yeah, the rail lines it played a role in making that possible because it was easier to ship that amount of hides back east. Yeah, so there's that reloading set. So you got a couple bullet molds there on the end. You've got your reloading press, and I think that one. I don't remember. I think that red one is actually a little bit newer. But anyway, that's kind of the reloading set there. There's a can of powder, and I sent Garrett a second one that also has a Smith & Wesson pistol in it. You can kind of see some of the powder cans, but those are the typical bullets you'd see as well. I think the one on the box is actually a Sharp 4477.
Yeah, it's what we got here is a Winchester mold loading tool. We have decapping tool, Sharps and Remington molds. This all looks pretty handy, really. Paper patch Sharps bullet right there.
Yeah.
And What we have here is in the back, we have a 5070 cartridge. On the left, 5090 Sharps cartridge. 2 Remington 4477 cartridges. Obviously,
bullet in that one case. Holy Moses.
that is the is that the 5090? No, that's
one of the 4477s.
A Remington cartridge with explosive tip made by inserting a 22 blank into the hollow point. Oh, that's on the far end. Cool.
That's on the far end. Yeah, no, the that's one of the 4477s.
Yeah, that's just like that span. But like I said, it has a heavier bullet because it's longer. But the case is literally the same as the 43 Spanish we were shooting in that video earlier in this video. But yeah, here, I'll take this down. I didn't get the other one uploaded, so I just got that one.
All right.
But let's see, we have a few comments here. Let's go through. Okay, Hardy said, yeah, that is Hardy Hat from prior streams. Just changed his channel name. Doug Dukes is talking about Adobe Wall. He said it's just outside a secure gate of a private ranch. You can get there, but it's bumpy dirt road.
Right,
Adobe Wall's outside a lock gate, so you can get there.
But I think, if I remember right, the where the Indian was shot up on the ridge, I think that one was on private, if I remember right. 'Cause my friend Henry Crawford was down there, and he's the one that took a picture. He stood up there on the hill and had somebody else take a picture for him. And he is tiny in that photograph.
Well, yeah, I was about to say at 1,500 yards, he'd just be a speck.
Yeah.
Yep. And Billy Allen said they didn't call him 4570, then they called him something else. Through 40 or through 70, 90, etc., came later. They referred to the cartridge length.
You are correct in some regard, but the military did designate them by that. That is a military designation. So the 4570,
405.
Infantry was 4570, 405 for the carbines, the cavalry guns. It was 4555, 405. The 45 Colt was 45 42. It was 250 for the first ones.
Or 255,
yeah.
To get into that
50, 70, 600 and something. So yeah, that did come in pretty 450. Early.
But the thing is, it depends, because your 56 cartridge is obviously not a 56. It's a 52, and it holds, well, I think 55 grains of powder.
Right.
The 5650 is not a 56. It is a 50 caliber, so they changed to that. Obviously, they didn't call it that. So the very first time I see it differently, according to the National Armory, that is Springfield Armory, is in 1865 with the 58 rimfire. That round is officially called 58-6500. That is in 1865, and that's the only thing I've ever seen that cartridge. It's a 58 rimfire conversion cartridge. So it depends. So I don't know about the 4570s yet. I haven't studied that deeply. I probably could go in there and look in the book, but I know that.
Sorry.
Go ahead. Sorry.
But yeah, you're right. So the 4590 was the 40. Oh, okay, I'm not even sure because I don't remember what the lengths are. Oh yeah, there's Kerry. He's got some of the lengths. There was 2 1/10 inch.
45 2 1/10 of 4570.
Yeah, and then the 5090 was a 52 3/4. Like I said, I don't remember what all the lengths are. But yeah, on the civilian market, they were marked by the lengths, but the military did designate them by that powder charge, which is going to be adopted later on as you get down the road. But some of them, like the 4477 Sharps Bottleneck, I'm pretty sure that one was advertised as that pretty early on. I've seen one advertisement paper, I think it was 1876, where they have it as 4477 Sharps Bottleneck. Yeah,
I love that. I love that round. I would love to take one of those 43 Spanish rounds and bore the chamber out just a little bit more so it would actually hold the true 4470 full-length cartridge or full-length bullet nose.
I'd like to have one of those.
Because there's a gazillion of those 43 Spanish guns around. Maybe find a parts one or something,
Right.
Sorry. I interrupt you.
The other thing I like to do with the rolling block is make one in 50/70.
Mm-hmm.
And if I could find one for a reasonable price, I would rebarrel it to 50/70. I put a
Well,
heavy,
you can find a lot of those New York State militia rolling blocks in 50/70 for
yeah, but the triggers
1400.
excuse me, the hammer spur is way too high on those.
Yeah, you don't like the military style spur.
Yeah, no. Some of your guys' ones is pretty close, if I remember right, to the 50/70.
Carrie said it's called Minute of Fur.
Yeah, man, that's a good one.
Doug Duke said, unless they picked up the case, as he's talking about at Adobe Walls, the day after the fight, that place was open a long time after the fight. No telling what was fired there afterwards.
Right, but
weren't most of these found inside the building structure itself?
Yeah, and I don't know how long the building stood there after the fact, but
well, also when they say
when you find one cartridge there, I'm willing to bet that might be something somebody was fooling around. But when you got a bunch, and it could be some cowboy just went out there with these 45 Colt and dumped a bunch of 45 Colts after he got done shooting. But some of that, especially the 50 calibers, as many as those are there, holy Moses. And the 50 was so the 4477 was the most popular buffalo hunt round. The 50/70 and 50/90 were right on its heels, and then 45/110 comes in there.
Mm-hmm.
And anybody
Doug Duke said
the 5140 was used. The 5140 was developed for military use.
Yeah, he said Lyman makes pretty good hand loading tools, experience, limited dice. Yeah, we lost one of our 45/70 dies the other day. So Caleb and I sat there with the Lyman hand loading tool for about 30 minutes, loaded 12 rounds, and said enough's enough. We ain't used to this anymore.
I got one of those for 45/70 over here too, and I tell you what, I took a pure lead paper patch bullet and put it in there, and I didn't have my bullet seating dice set right. Swedged that thing out to where it wouldn't even go in the chamber.
They're talking about this. Gots Loco said the pliers tool on the left, I believe, is a Burdan decapping tool.
Yeah.
Hardy says, so Duke, let's say you took another crack at a Buffalo Hunter impression. What outfit equipment do you choose?
Oh, if I was going to do that, and I plan on doing that someday, I'm probably for a sidearm, I'm going to have a Colt Colt conversion. Those would be
obviously, if you want to be like everybody else, you're going to need a Sharps.
Yeah, I thought about a Sharps or a rolling block. Actually, I've thought about a rolling block. But if I go with a Sharps, it's going to be a carbine conversion. It's going to be a Civil War conversion, 50/70. Rolling block, it'll be 50/70 as well. And then probably going to have a Henry or a 66 Winchester.
Mm-hmm.
Because the whole idea that all those guys had nothing but the Sharpses with them. No, there was guys there that had Henrys who got the proof there. There was a bunch of Henry rounds found, so there were probably some 66 Winchesters. And I probably have one of those. Just because, once the Indians get in close, you don't want to be fooling around with a single shot.
Mm-mm.
Try to keep them at distance, and if they keep coming, then you got to move something a little bit faster. But anyway, I definitely outfit.
How about outfit? What he's saying, clothing articles.
Clothing articles, probably going to have my good old buckskin coat and one of my black hats and whatever, wool clothing. Probably something that's not too different from my scout impression, to be honest.
Yeah, he says, Kerry Solomar said, patch bullets, you only need to die set once. Once the brass is sized, all I use is a powder compression die, set the bullet by hand.
Yeah, and you can get away with that too. The problem is that at the reloading bench is a little bit different than versus in the wild, and I didn't have too much luck with my bullets staying seated. They would fall out. But what's funny is I went to a shooting competition up in the Black Hills one year when they were shooting the Sharps. I should say it's black powder cartridge rifle competition. And a lot of those guys, they had one of those like Lyman 310 tools that had a powder compression die on it.
Mm-hmm.
They would sit there and they'd dip their powder out and they had their long tube and they'd sit there and pour it in. And Then they put that in there and compressor powder, and then they had their bullets all stacked and they just dropped them in and shoot them. And it's like, yeah, they was reloading and shooting right there on the spot.
Huh. Okay, let's see. Billy Allen said that after the hunting petered out, buffalo bones became profitable for a short time.
Yep, they turned them into bone meal. Yeah, so that was the thing. People running out there with wheelbarrows and wagons and picking up hundreds of thousands of bones. And then, you'd see those pile. Then after that, there was nothing left, just cattle grazing.
Mm-hmm. Carrie said, "You absolutely will. You can crimp on a paper patch, but you need to be real careful."
Yeah, and I tried crimping them, and I was always cutting my patches, and then I'd get I'd lead my barrel right there at the chamber throat, because that would go up and hit the bullets that I had were not really designed to be shot through my rifle. Yeah, because I had a guy explain it to me. He said, shooting with the diameter of my bore, he said the paper patch bullets I should have been shooting is when I drop the bullet through the bore, as it goes all the way through and falls out the muzzle. And when I paper patch it, then it would engage. And mine wouldn't. They'd go in and hit the rifling right off the bat. So I didn't have.
Most of your modern stuff's got a tighter bore, like your reproductions. Like for a trapdoor, you actually want a 4.60 to a 4.62.
Yeah.
I mean, because those trapdoors are big bores. But you could shoot the 4.58, I suppose. That would be a good paper patch round in a trapdoor. I don't know. Right. I don't have a lot of experience with the sharps, though. So, okay, a few more questions here. We got Hardy said, how were primers packaged? We've all seen cartridge boxes and powder cans, but were primers sold in the small tin like percussion caps?
So that box that Garrett threw up there, there's a box that's got a bullet laying across the top of it. That's primers.
Let me see if I can. It might not be this. Okay. Yep.
The one with a blue lid, that's a box of primers.
Yep. Very good. I'm still impressed with this 22 exploding tip and this over here in this Remington 4477.
I don't think that would penetrate too far on a buffalo.
Be bad on an Indian if you hit something that would actually cause it to explode. So anyway, well, guys, I think we're about there. Let me go over here and check comments one more time.
So I was going to blindside Garrett on this and ask everybody's opinion, and you can kind of give a thumbs up or a yes. But how many of y'all think Garrett needs to release a album of old-fashioned, old-timey songs?
Release an album?
Yeah.
I released a CD with a couple other people once upon a time, a long time ago. But an album, like an internet album? I already got a playlist.
Just on YouTube or something.
I got a playlist. I have a music
playlist. In other words,
playlist.
I'm telling you, start singing more old-timey songs.
I've been working on it. If you go over to 11 Bang Bang, look through the playlist and look at music, most of my stuff's on there. I have a few things I haven't put on there yet. I haven't put Hang Down Your Head, Tom Dooley on there. I got that one recorded. I don't know if I've put Sweet Betsy from Pike on there. And I don't think that I've actually put the theme song from this on there yet, but I got 7 or 8 on there. Every now and then I turn one out. But I should,
doing one together, but we need to get together and actually do that one of these days.
Yeah, Duke actually sent me some songs to record for this show, but I just didn't have time this week. Wish I did.
There'll be plenty of opportunities.
By land and seas, and hi. Yeah. You just got here just in time.
Just got here just in time to rewatch it again when we get done. Oh, shoot.
It was a good one. I especially liked the reading the book about Adobe walls there. I like that.
Yeah, and like I said, one of these days I'll get more into that when I can get reread up on it. But Bangs, I'm heading back north again. So that was the other thing I was going to discuss before we get off here. Next episode. I think I got time to do one more episode. And then I head north about mid-April. And once I get up there, it's kind of be iffy on what I can do for chat. So I might take a couple weeks because turkey season is going to be coming up about the time I get up there. My good friend, she's getting ready to move for another job. So it's like I want to spend some time with her before she takes off. So we're probably gonna take a small break in there, but we'll get resumed up. Hopefully in May. If not, it'll be June. It's all going to depend on what I have for availability. But was going to ask if there's anything out there that the audience would like to hear about on the next one. And if Garrett, well, I don't know if you've got any ideas for the next one, but
I have one, but I'll let them put theirs out.
All right, yeah. So, yeah, if anybody has an idea like what you'd like to hear, and I'm going to kind of restrict it to the Great Plains areas, because I have better knowledge in that area. At some point, we will eventually get to other areas like the Apache Wars, the Snake War, the Nez Perce War. I know Garrett's been asking me to get on the Nez Perce War for a while. We will revisit.
We can do that when you get back up north. You're more in that country up there,
right? We will revisit the Great Sioux War once again, because that used to be on Garrett's channel, and I think it's been taken down at this point, hasn't it?
Yeah, we took it down.
Yeah.
But that's okay. We get a chance to go it again.
Right. And I'll be a little more prepared. There was a few things I got wrong on that one. But anyway, kind of give us an idea. And the reason why I want to get the ideas rolling ahead of time is one of the reasons is YouTube no longer, they're really getting really strict about us handling guns and live streams. So some of the stuff we may have to go out and film or find beforehand. So if we get an idea of what's coming up on the next one, then we got a couple weeks to get things ready, kind of get squared away.
Yeah.
I don't think they've got any problem if they're on display behind you. But
no, you can't touch it. You're not supposed to touch it. But that's why we did like we did tonight, which worked pretty good. Because then we actually get shooting footage in too. So
right.
Hardy said, I'd like to learn about poor man's guns. What did the average sodbuster do? We've talked about doing that before.
Yeah, we have.
That's going to take a little more prep. That's going to take a little more prep, though.
Yeah, I was thinking that would probably be more of a long format video.
Yeah, and also you have to specify what era.
Right.
Because 1860s, you're going to still see a lot of flintlocks and stuff.
But the thing of it is, a poor man's gun, everybody gets the idea that the double barrel shotgun, every farmer had a double barrel shotgun.
Ooh, they can be expensive.
Double barrel shotguns are freaking expensive compared to a rifle or a surplus Spencer,
Unless you get like a Belgium-made Meteor or something back in the day.
Right. I mean, most of the time in the 1840s, a double barrel shotgun ranged anywhere from $40 to $60. Whereas you could get a plain old Kentucky long rifle for 20 to 30. So, yeah.
He said, or learn about things people had, such as powder on cans, tobacco tins, watches, etc. Lots of history. And I know you can cover that a lot when you get back up north because you play a Fort Post settler.
The problem is I won't be able to display any of that because that was the other thing is the Park Service put back in that you have to have permits to film on Park Service. Yeah. So,
but I mean, you have a very good working knowledge of prices and stuff. What did you tell me that one time that can of corn cost you
$1?
Yeah, but how much did it cost back east?
Oh, you're looking at maybe 10 to 15 cents a can.
And a can of corn at Fort Laramie was $1.
Yeah.
So Oregon Outback said Nez Perce War, fascinating story, unbelievably tough people.
Yeah.
And Hardy said maybe go through old photos and talk about what people are wearing, doing, etc. That'd be a good one.
Yeah, the problem with that is that going through old photos, I've got a bunch of them. The thing is figuring out which ones are copyrighted and which ones are not, because some of those are, photos are in a private collection. And while the photo itself technically falls under the public domain, the person that took a photo of the photo is copyrighted.
There's a way to not get around that, should I say. There's a way to distinguish. I can come up with a list that are definitely not copyrighted.
So anyway, that would be something that we could do. It's probably going to be a fairly short chat.
Yeah, that's going to be down the road somewhere, though, probably, I would imagine, because that takes time to get all that together.
But let's see if we got a consensus on here.
He'd like to hear about Chiefs Santana. Chiefs Santa Ana. I always say Santa Ana, but it's Santana.
Because there's Santana, there's Satanta, there's Santa Ana. There are a lot of chiefs. Are you talking about the Kiowa chief or the because that's the one that I know most about. I don't know that much. I need to read up more. But yeah, there was a Kiowa chief, Satanta, and he raised hell, raised some good hell before and after the Medicine Lodge Treaty, and raised hell after that too.
By Land and Sea said, I'd like to see something, if you haven't already covered it, on what the catalyst was for Red Cloud to join forces with Sitting Bull.
Well, the big one was, keeping the whites out. That was part of Red Cloud's war, keeping the whites out of the Powder River Country, because the Powder River Country, that was what the Lakotas wanted, because that's where all the buffalo were. And, it's funny that they said that, the whites coming through there was a violation of the treaty of 51, but the fact that they were there on Crow territory was a violation of the Treaty of 51. So it's like,
yeah.
I
believe, didn't we cover that in episode 1, Tales of the Trails on Red Cloud's War?
Yeah, because I started with the Grattan and I went all the way through.
On this one, on the first of Tales of the Trails, the first of this series.
I don't know.
We covered the wagon box in the hayfield fight, and I believe you.
I
believe you covered that in that.
Yeah, because Sitting Bull did take a part in that, but then when Red Cloud decided to try to negotiate the sale of the Black Hills, that's when him and Crazy Horse and Sitting Bull, because Crazy Horse and Sitting Bull were the opinion that they're not giving another inch to the white man. They all kind of split.
Yeah. Serpentanza said, I'm talking about the Mescalero.
Okay.
That's your war chief.
That's the one. Okay. Yeah. I know which one you're talking about now. And I don't know that much about him. And that's one I need to say, yeah. Anyway, yeah. I need to read up more on the Apache War stuff. I don't know that much, to be honest. I know some of the earlier stuff. I've read articles on that, but like I said, most of the stuff that I know is going to be anywhere on the Great Plains, and so from Texas to North Dakota and Montana and there, and most of that's going to be Wyoming and Montana. But oh yeah, Hardy's got a good one there.
Yeah. Maybe though, for those who want to do living history, tack on recommendation to what's available, reproduce various outfits from old photos.
Yeah, we could do that. Kind of go over things. I'll tell you right now, the best resource out there if you want to get into living history for period authentic clothes made out of authentic fabrics with authentic prints, go to South Union Mills.
Mm-hmm.
They have, and the thing of it is, you're not going to break the bank at South Union Mills. It's expensive, but it's not
the most.
You're not going to pay $350 for a pair of pants or $350 for a jacket. Or, well, yeah, you will pay $300 for a jacket.
Yeah, that's say you're going to pay $350 for a jacket.
You can get a 3-piece monkey suit for about $500. That's with pants, vest, and jacket. Now, the thing is that their shirts, and I found this, shirts cost as much as pants. They're about $150. So I usually make my own shirts or I have somebody make them for me because shirts are cheap. I can, they're easy to do. But yeah, South Union Mills has good stuff. Their buttonholes are hand stitched, which is, if you're a stitch counter, that's pretty important on that stuff. And the other thing of it is the South Union Mills is made to historic patterns. So they do not fit. The clothing does not fit like your modern clothing does. So your pants are going to come up above your belly button. If you buy a coat like a tailcoat, that tailcoat is only going to go down to your belly button. The vest is only going to go down to your belly button. That's because everything back then rode a little bit higher. That's why everybody, I think that's one of the reasons why everybody says, oh, yeah, you know, the gun belts were worn way low on the hilt because there's a big distance between the top of the pants and the gun belt. And it's like, no, don't base it off where it's located on the pants. Base it where it's located against the elbow, where the butt of the gun. And when you're wearing it around your hips, about where the modern belt line is, that gun's going to line up right here with your elbow. But anyway, that's a sidetrack thing. Yeah,
So
that was great.
what do you want to do? You want to put that that chat where we react to live photos and stuff down the line just a little bit?
Yeah, let's do that
because
one
we need to
give
do
some time to kind of figure stuff out on that one because that's going to take some work on it.
We need to do next a chat that you have the books for right now. Would be in my opinion.
Right.
You may not have them later.
Right. So what I've got available right now is we could do one on Texas,
Early Texas.
Yeah, because I got Republic era Texas, so 1840s and stuff, and hopefully Doug Dukes, I won't get anything wrong on that one.
I was about to say he's gonna be.
I think he knows more about that one than I do.
We need to have him on one of these someday.
My library that I've got here is just early Texas. I've only read a handful of the books. But yeah, we could do that one. I could do another one on the fur trade if we wanted to. Let's see here. I can read up some more, and we can keep going on with the thing we've been doing here, kind of that 1874 Buffalo or Red River War. Because I've got the books, I just need to sit down and read them. Get more into Adobe walls and such. We can talk about some of the scouts. Because I don't think I've done one just on the scouts yet.
Do you have anything on the history of the Santa Fe Trail?
Yeah, that would be, well, I don't have the books with me, but, Ben's Fort played a big role into that. So, my time there, we could get.
So what do you feel like doing? Sounds like you're feeling Republic of Texas.
Actually, I'm more inclined towards the scout program.
Scout program
on scouts. So yeah.
Let's do that.
That's
then.
one that that's a program that I gave up at Fort Laramie. Unfortunately, most of my books on the scouts I know about are up in Wyoming, but
that's what I was saying. That's why you might want to do Texas while you're here and you have the books.
I'll probably take some of these books with me.
Yeah. Whatever you think, I'm sure we'll work it out. But it'll be something about that, guys.
Oregon Outback wants me to do one on Playboy. That might come another time.
So you're about ready to shut her down? Looks like
I think we're getting pretty close here to shutting down.
Yeah, people are kind of making their way out of here.
Yeah, if anybody's, let's tell you what, we'll go about 2.5 minutes, and we'll close out on the 2:25 mark. If anybody's got any last minute questions, comments, concerns, go ahead and throw them out there.
Yeah,
we're waiting on that.
Oregon Outback wants to know if you did the Playboy, if you have any books on hand.
I might have 2 1976 copies. I think if it was, a friend of mine gave them to me, and I opened them up and looked at it, and I was like, they're thick magazines. There's more articles than there are pictures. And I was really impressed. And the articles actually had some how do I want to put it? They were interesting. Not in the adult fun way. I mean, they were just interesting. What's going on in the world today? Articles. Yeah, Serpent. Yeah, I don't have well, I think I've still got the Patreon, but I don't do much with it anymore. But anyway, yeah, I think we'll go ahead and just do the Scout one on the next one. Hey, Hardy, you were fine. So I was going to ask you, Garrett, what do you guys got coming up next for 11 Bang Bang?
Actually don't have a shooting video this week, which is, we have not missed a week since last June when we take our time off, but that is because we've just been working on the Louisiana Gray wants to hear about Texas, but we've just been working on the range so much that we're almost done. We almost finished it today. I think Ethan is just doing a range tour video tomorrow morning. Okay. If he gets it put out. And then hopefully next week we'll be back with. I want to do that Remington rolling block again pretty bad. And I know that Ethan actually we're not having a video tomorrow, but I think Monday morning, Ethan's going to be releasing his version of the Cabin Fever Challenge. And I think he's doing that with your old brown bess, I think. So it might be something different, but that's the plan. Since we worked on the range all for the last 2 weeks, we ran out of videos. And so we're kind of out of shooting videos. He's going to hopefully film some in the morning and maybe release one Monday morning instead of Sunday morning.
Perfect.
What do you got coming out? Anything? I guess I can make you another video.
Yeah. Yeah, you got all my stuff.
What about Johnny Reb, Billy Yank?
I was going to film that tonight because I had the last one go up today at noon.
So is that the end of the season, or
I was going to do a couple more.
Okay, good.
I was thinking about getting because I need to get if this is going to take off, I need to get a couple of coats for that. I need to get a Confederate sack coat, and I was thinking of getting the Billy Yank promoted to a lieutenant, a quartermaster lieutenant. But I looked at the price of the officers' frocks, and I decided that was not necessary at this point. But anyway, yeah, I'm gonna film some more of those tomorrow. And if anybody wants to know how much for those little 60-second little videos, it takes me about 30 minutes of filming and editing each one of those to get those put together. So yeah, it takes a little time on them. Especially, yeah, it's like I come up with those on the fly.
Hey, you're doing pretty good. Ethan was saying, he's commenting to me today about that. He said, I don't see Duke. I now just see Johnny Reb and Billy Yank.
And the thing of it is like I film one of them. I'll get in one of those outfits. I will film 3 or 4 of those. And then I change over to the other outfit. And then I got to go back and watch each one of those because I don't even remember at that point what I was going with. So it takes a little bit.
Any plans for a full length Billy Yank and Johnny Reb?
No, because that takes. I'd have to sit down and start writing a script, and that's.
By Land and Sea wants to know what rolling block I have. I've only had 2 rolling blocks. I have had a Petter Sully carbine in 4570 with the bull barrel. I once had that one, but right now I just have a 43 Spanish full length military one, and I really like that one. I've shot quite a few. Like I said, I've owned the 2, and that 43 Spanish is just such a hot, flat shooting round
with low recoil.
Yeah, and actually holds 80 grains of powder in that dude, and so it just. I really like that 43 Spanish.
It hits harder than the 4570 sharps, and it kicked less.
I think so too. So they're saying it's a great series. So. Hardy wants to hear more about Blackjack Parsnip.
Oh, yeah.
Are you about ready to shut this thing down?
Yeah, let's get ready to shut this thing down. So, yeah, I think we'll go ahead and, we're going to take your ideas into consideration. We will be doing, we'll do one on living history clothing and stuff. We'll do one with the photographs. The more I'm sitting here thinking about it, the one on Texas, I might see if I can ask Doug Dukes if he will come on for that one because
that'd be good.
Doug Dukes knows Texas.
A little bit.
He wrote a book on the Texas Rangers.
He wrote the book on it.
At least on their firearms. So I think it would be. I think I'd be if I can get him on, we'll do that then. So that one will be on the list. Further down the road, but yeah, the next one we'll just do the scouts because that's another one I can do off the top of my head. And then after that, we might revisit the Great Sioux War, but I think we're only going to get a chance to get one more in before I head north. So that one will be before we shut things down here. That one will be April 8th.
Yes.
If my calendar will move, I got it marked down here. And so the next one. that we would have would be the 22nd of April, and I'm not going to make any guarantees that that's going to happen. So we'll see, because I'll be getting ready. I'll actually be starting I'll be starting back up at Fort Laramie that weekend, so I might put it off until May or June.
I was going to say, and I should have said earlier, a week from tonight, tune in to 11 Bang Bang Reload Show. I don't know how many channels it'll be streaming across that night, but we will have Ethan interviewing British muzzleloaders.
Oh, okay.
That's going to be a big one, I hope.
Cool.
So
anyway. That'd be April Fool's Day.
Yeah, April Fools, we're going to have British muzzleloaders. Just kidding. Oh, so you ready to shut her down?
Yeah, I think that would be, we'll go ahead and shut her down here. So thank everybody for coming on tonight. Stay tuned. 2 weeks, we'll do one on the Scouts. As Garrett said, they have one on theirs in a week. With that, thanks for coming on. Be sure to like, share, and subscribe. Keep your powder dry. Y'all stay safe out there and have a good one.
Bye.